Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Roscoe.
Present.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember London. Councilmember London.
Here.
All right, thank you. Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Sardinius.
Here.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum.
Okay, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then stay standing for the invocation. Father Pagwagwa is here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please.
Heavenly Father, we come to you with a humble heart this evening to ask you for your blessings, your wisdom, and the courage to be able to come and guide your people. We ask you to bring peace to all of us. In a very special way, we pray for all those in the Middle East, for peace and unity in our communities and in the world. We ask this with faith in a very special way for our city of Key Biscayne. Amen.
Amen.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to have us pause for a moment of silence for the people of Israel, for the innocent men, women, and children whose lives were violently taken, for those who are missing or have been taken hostage, for the families and friends of the victims. We especially pray for our residents who are suffering while their families are living this tragedy. And we pray for the safe return of all Americans. So now a moment of silence. Thank you very much.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is public comments.
At this time, Melissa White.
Good evening, Council. Melissa White, 370 Heather Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. The Key Biscayne Community Foundation would like to send its support to Israeli citizens at home and abroad after the tragic terrorist attacks on October 7th. We'd like to hold a vigil. I've spoken to Rabbi Caroline and with the Chabad of Key Biscayne and the Key Biscayne Community Foundation and community residents and friends and supporters. We'd like to gather at Paradise Park for a moment of silence, for prayers, and to just gather together in support of what Israel is going through, in support of peace in the region, and put our thoughts and our prayers with those in this community that are suffering. And we hope that all of you can join us.
When is it?
Friday, October 13th, Friday the 13th, unfortunately, 5:30 to 6:30. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be with you from Philadelphia, unfortunately.
Thank you for your announcement. Next, Madam Clerk.
Is the agenda approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals?
Based on the events of late and the letter before us, I will add a discussion item on the state lobbying contract. Any other additions, deletions?
You know, I just wanted to. I'm looking at the consent agenda. I just on record. I think. Are we able to discuss the consent agenda in general before hold, or we have to pull something to discuss it?
I mean, if you want to, technically, if you're going to discuss it, you should pull it. But if it's going to be something that you just want to say something quickly?
I just wanted to clarify that any of the grants that we're receiving or that we're going to go for, that allows us some flexibility because we're still determining what level of stormwater system that we want. And I just want to make sure that we're not locking ourselves into anything that we may adjust later. And I talked to the manager. It seems like that
That's
is
the case.
correct and it is the case. I just want to make sure that's on record.
Great.
Maybe
All right.
A related point, the item that's at 8B, I'd like it to stay on consent, but the way the wording addressed the 30 to 100%, we were briefed, and I think we all understand that that's really a two-step. So I'm good with leaving it that way, but that's just for clarification in case anyone was.
It's not the same thing.
Okay.
I'd like to pull 8B.
Can you
Yeah.
please?
He said pool 8B.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I might suggest, if one of the council members would like to concur, I'd like to pull 8E for you all to have a discussion, and I think we have some good update information on that as well. It'll just be a quick 30, 45-second conversation about it.
Okay, so pulled is 8B as in boy and 8E as in engine. Just slowing down my engine, but okay, here we go.
Jeremy's fast.
Anything else on the approval of the agenda? Okay, seeing none. The agenda is approved. We go to special presentations. Mr. Manager.
So, Mr. Mayor, council members, I'd like to bring up Basile Stojanovic. He is going to give us a presentation. He also has his team with him today. He's going to give us a presentation for this year's, what we've known in the past to be Key Biscayne Car Week. They have now rebranded it to be Concours, or Emerson Fittipaldi Concours d'Elegance Key Biscayne. As we introduce him, I just want to, I think many of you got to attend last year. It was a fantastic event. After that, I challenged the team that we make this even better. In fact, maybe even double it and make it even more exciting to the residents of Key Biscayne as well as those in the region. So Saleh is here. He's taking the lead, and he would like to give you a presentation of the event and obviously be available to have any discussion afterwards.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Manager. So, as you guys know, we're doing this event with Emerson Fittipaldi. He's two-time world champion and two-time Indy 500 winner. He's like a motorsport legend. He's a long-time resident on Key Biscayne. His kids attended, schools here. He's now in Italy because his son is racing. So, for obvious reasons, you got to be in Italy as a center of the motorsport. We are doing this event. This is our third year. We of course had to skip the COVID year, but as Mr. Manager mentioned, we got challenged to make this event even bigger and better, which is also our goal. So we started with a name. We call it the Concours d'Elegance, which is again like something that in a motorsport world means upscale event. We bring in a lot of cars that we exhibit in Village Green. We do kind of like we partner up with a store that's called Walt Grace that does the selection of the cars. So we make sure that these cars are really, something that residents and people want to see. And we use the Village Green around the fountain. We exhibit the cars. We have a bunch of partners that we used last year. Everybody from Miami GP, which is F1 that happens, F1 race that happens at the stadium. We had JP Morgan, which is returning client. We benefit a couple of charities and so on. I'm going to go now through presentation so you guys can visualize what I'm saying. So again, it's going to happen December 15th to December 17th with Emerson Fittipaldi. Key Biscayne, you guys know about the Key Biscayne, so I don't need to. This is how we pitch it as the, you know, very high-end community, and that, you know, 14,800 residents, very diverse community. So, but I'm not going to bore you with that. This is just some pictures of the events that we done in the past. The very first event we did, History of Emerson Fittipaldi, because we wanted everybody to kind of know and understand who Emerson was. And we exhibit some of his cars that he drove in his career. And, you know, he was there to talk to people and kind of just, you know, so that people just understand who he was. We had test drives with McLaren cars, which, again, Emerson drove McLaren car. He's kind of like a spokesperson for McLaren. We brought the actual F1 car that was exhibited at the Monaco Square that residents were able to see and you know, take pictures with. Again, the big exhibition of the cars happened at the Village Green. Emerson also drove into the Key Biscayne with his very famous car Spirit of Miami, which he raced at the very first Grand Prix of Miami. So we did like a very, you know, again, history is very important in motorsport racing, so we wanted to showcase. We benefit a couple of charities. One of them is Miami Project. Dr. Bart Green did actually 2 surgeries on Emerson. Emerson is very close to that, and you know, he's got a very close relationship with Dr. Green. So part of the proceeds go to the Miami Project. Again, this is the schedule that we're proposing, which is going to be December 15th. On a Friday, there is at the Key Biscayne Yacht Club, there is like a reception to meet Emerson, to, you know, have a chance to talk to him. On Saturday, we're doing the concourse, which is again at the Village Green. At 7:30 in the morning, Emerson, so this year is our partner Lotus. We're bringing the actual car that Emerson won the World Championship with, which is the 1972 Lotus car, and the very new Eviha car, which is like this super electric car that is kind of shows the future of the motorsport racing. So we'll have them drive him and his son to the Key Biscayne in these cars and kind of showcase and open the event. And then we have the, on Sunday, we have the presentation of the awards, because this year what we brought in is we're judging actually the cars. There's going to be 6 categories that we're judging cars with, and the cars are going to get the awards depending on, you know, how well they're maintained, you know, how significant they're for the motorsport world, and so on. And then we have this ceremony is going to happen here at Monaco Square. We'll build a stage and do the whole presentation. On Saturday night, I missed that, there is a fundraising gala at the the Key Biscayne, and that gala, it's benefiting the Miami Project Foundation. Again, this is the areas that we're using, the Village Green, we're going to use the Monaco Square, and then hopefully we'll use the Village Greenway, and right here the Green Park, where we want to set up the history of Lotus cars, because again they have a huge history with Emerson, so we want to show it as well. This is some of our sponsors, the Lotus, JP Morgan, F1, which is the Miami Grand Prix, Taschen, Ritz-Carlton. So that's about the presentation. So I just want to kind of explain you how the event works so that you guys have the understanding. The event is pretty much run in 2 parts, right? So there is the event which happens on the Village Green and the Monaco Square. This is where we need your help, because we want to make that part very, very attractive to the residents. We want to try to bring in something that residents would fully enjoy. For example, Miami Grand Prix brings the simulators of the actual F1 car, which kids loved it, and they were there enjoying it all day. There was a line, to try this. There is a lot of different activations. They can take pictures with Emerson, get the autograph from him. We also set up the history of Miami Autosport Racing, like a little exhibition. There was in a city hall that people again were able to come and enjoy. There is again, Emerson drove the car. There was F1 car. So that's one part of the event. Another part of the event is the dinner that we do at the Ritz-Carlton. That dinner is for the charities, meaning that whatever money we collect on that dinner goes to the charity. So there are literally two P&Ls ran for, from our side. There is an event, and then there is the fundraising dinner. We don't mix those two together because, again, we run them completely separate. So this is the support that you guys are giving us goes directly into the event. Our 501c is, we don't have anybody on a payroll on our 501c. Everything that we raise, we give to the charity. There is it's like everything that's from the dinner goes to the charity. On the other side, everything that goes from you guys plus sponsors goes to the actual event. And we're trying to make this event bigger, better, bring more. Just to give you like an example, to bring one of these cars to Key Biscayne, it costs like $40,000-$50,000 because some of these cars are actually flown from England because they're based out of there. So we are really trying to bring something here that is very unique. The actual run of the car that I just showed you that Emerson will drive to the Key Biscayne, not even Pebble Beach saw that. And Pebble Beach is the largest concourse event in the world. So they even didn't, do that at the Pebble Beach. Again, to run that car costs $30-something thousand, right? So we're giving opportunity to residents, something that's never seen, in the United States before, because that car was never on the streets in the United States before. So this is what and again, thanks to Mr. Manager, we were challenged to do things that are really very unique, very specific, that we, everybody at the village can enjoy. So this is kind of in a nutshell about the event.
Saleh, before you go, can you kind of give, your why you're committed to this as a resident, and then secondly, the relationship that you established with the Ritz and local business?
Sure. Well? So we do very big outreach to the residents as far as bringing their cars. We want them to exhibit their cars. Number two, the vendors that going to set up at the Village Green, that's mostly residents, that have businesses here, so we want to help them. Ritz-Carlton, came on board after, we present to them our plan for this year, and they're actually now making the whole deal with Lotus, so that Lotus is going to use Ritz-Carlton kind of as their base. They're talking about doing the brunch on Sunday, because the CEO of the Lotus is going to be here. Their biggest clients are going to be in town, so they're bringing a lot of very high-profile people to town, and to the village, and they will definitely enjoy it. We, for example, we have the presentation of the awards here at the Monaco Square. We have a local band from Key Biscayne that's going to perform, during the day. So we are really trying to engage the residents as much as we can. I'm the resident, been here for 6 years. I, own my place. Emerson, again, he's been a long time village resident. So we are here to stay. We are. This is something that both of us do out of the love. We don't do this for money. I own a company called Function. I produce many big events. I produce pretty much 80% of the build-outs for the hospitalities at the stadium for F1. I do same for Miami Open and so on. So this is something we do from love. This is not something that we are, trying to make money. This is not something that's any revenue for us. This is really something we want to bring to community. We want to enjoy it. I want my kids to enjoy it. Emerson wants his kids to enjoy it. So this is something really for that we're doing for community. And thank God for our good businesses. We can do something like this.
Questions?
Yeah, I mean, you answered some of them. I like that you spoke about how this benefits the businesses. That was one of my questions. Just ensuring that, whatever activities we're doing out there, we're bringing economic benefits for the local businesses around here. Are there any businesses that are not local that come out, or is it only local businesses?
It's mostly local. Some sponsors that we're bringing are like, for example, J.P. Morgan. They're based out of Brickell, and things like Taschen, books there. So the main sponsors that actually put money are not from the village, but then the people that are actually getting money are from village.
So then I was going to ask you the other question. To run the event, what's the cost? I'm guessing, because you said something like $40,000 to bring a car over. I'm guessing the cost is much higher than what we're putting in, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, after all the product, and look, again, I own a production company, right? So I own a lot of things. I own stages, I own lighting, I own LED screens, I own all this. So I bring all that for nothing, right? So the money that we spent, it's like, over 200,000. But then, if you actually look what the value of this event is, if I would produce this, somewhere else, I would easily charge another 200 on top of that with all that we, need to pay, because we also, do a lot of printing, we do the security, we pay the off-duty police, we, barricades, things like that. So we invest, as much as we can into the event. And again, our goal is to make it bigger and better every year. That's really what we are trying to do. So even with, some sponsors, for example, when we were doing with McLaren, that you saw that we were doing the test drives, at the end of the day, they didn't pay us what we wanted, but we were kind of like, we would rather get that activation than now start to, get, money better. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we actually asked them, we told them, no problem, pay us whatever you can, but we need this activation to be like, bring the nicest McLaren cars you have so that the residents can try it. So again, that's our goal is always like same thing with Taschen, for example. Taschen, they don't have the money, but they have these amazing auto books. They have like this Ferrari book that costs $6,000, and we want, residents to see things like that. Like we want them, it's the whole cover of the book is made out of the engine block, like, the crazy things. So that's what we're trying to do.
All right. So those sponsors you're getting pays for the difference of whatever else to run the event in the cars here. Yeah. And then the last thing I think was just a little bit helpful, but it has been unclear before, is what the purpose of the event is. I think I heard it. I think you said something clear, that there's two events that are very separate, because I was always thinking that this is a charitable event. The purpose is to raise money for a cause. Right. I don't know if that is what it is. It looks like there's two events. One of them is to raise money for a cause. The other one, I'm not 100% sure what it is. It could be to showcase cars for enthusiasts, or to allow residents to learn about something maybe that people don't know, or younger people. I don't know what that purpose is of having the event, and maybe that just needs to be clarified a little bit more.
Sure. So
but that could help.
Here's where the idea came, right? So Emerson, when he lived here on Key Biscayne, he has a son and a daughter, right? Mm-hmm. His son at that time, I may be mistaken, 8-9 years old, right? And his son was really getting into the auto racing, right? So Emerson was like kind of, the idea of how do you become an F1 driver, right? So what he wanted to do is he wanted to showcase, because everybody here plays soccer, they roller skate, all that. And Emerson was like, I want to really bring to Key Biscayne like motorsports. I want to show them how you get to be an F1 driver, right? Because there's really not that culture here. So Emerson was very, for him was very important to showcase that. So very first year, we actually brought karting we brought, because you start F1, any racing, you start in a karting, right? So his son was actually driving the karts. So we closed here that's McIntyre, right? So we closed the McIntyre Street, and we actually had small, small carts that kids were running, right? Mm-hmm. So that whole idea that Emerson wants to showcase the motorsport world and to just kind of like bring it home per se, that's what the goal of that event is. And then again, we've been challenged by Ms. Manager to make this even bigger and better. So that's why we now like kind of going to do the concourse, because Concours d'Elegance is always in the world the top, motorsport event. And it's, you have a Pebble Beach, you have at Amelia, you have Goodwood in Britain. So these are like a very, very upscale, high-end events that bring the right people. So it's all about that culture of cars, culture of motorsport racing. That's the whole idea of that event. We just want people to enjoy it. And again, Emerson's been his whole life in motorsport racing, and that's like, I just give you a stupid comparison, but I'm a rower. I went to Olympics and all of that, so it's almost like me bringing my boat over here because I want everybody to see what rowing is. You know what I mean? But like that's really the idea, is to just showcase the whole motorsport world, and we think that people enjoy it. I mean, from what feedback we are getting is that people and kids and residents really, really enjoy it, and we just think it's a great event for the village.
Thank you.
And I think if you step back and look at the purpose for the entire community program and events program, so to speak, the idea is to really bring different types of unique events, but are really from Key Biscayne. I've kind of come up with the phrase, of Key Biscayne for Key Biscayne. And when you can have someone like Saleh with a talent that he brings, someone like an Emerson with a talent and skill that he brings to provide a special event for the community, I think that really, again, I said it during the budget meeting, I think it's really what makes Key Biscayne so special.
Allison?
So thank you, first of all. Thank you for coming today and for sharing all this, and also thank you for your dedication to the community to donate so much of your time and your business. I think it's great when we have things from Key Biscayne for Key Biscayne. Thank you also for clarifying the question we had about charitable giving, because that was a concern of ours. I think this sounds very exciting. My concerns no longer have anything to do with the event. I do think as a council and with the manager, I would love at some point to have conversations about exactly what our priorities are, because the idea of not fully funding zero waste culture and spending $30,000, $40,000 to fly a car from England is like, that just doesn't seem to line up quite right with where I think we want to go. I think we should be able to try to do both, but that one kind of stuck out. So, but I think this sounds very exciting. And I'm sure that everyone will have a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the clarifications.
No problem. And again, we are, we are not spending money that is not like we're not wasting money, in the other words, right? So the flying the car, somebody pays for that. We're just
No,
trying
I understand
to,
that. I wasn't making an accusation of any
No,
sort of.
just so you know
It
that
just,
we're, yeah,
like the carbon footprint, even just
Absolutely.
of doing that is
100%,
big deal.
and this is the reason why we're presenting the electric car.
Yeah, I saw that. That was very exciting.
The whole again idea is that we showcase where was the future of the motorsport, right? And this is like our partner for that reason is Lotus, because they launched the electric car that's again can more so the money that we use from you guys from the residents and village, really that money goes to create more programs for residents and kids so that they can enjoy it more. These things that are, I just mentioned about the cars, just because this is the value that we're bringing to the village, not necessarily that we're spending the money for that, right? But this is our deals that we're making with our partners and sponsors. So whatever, we just want to create are very, very interactive, interesting, that residents enjoy. That's all we're doing. Like, it's literally like, I want myself, when I finish setting up that event, to come with my kids and enjoy the event. That's the bottom line. I don't get to enjoy much of my events, but this is the one that I really want to enjoy.
Okay. Frank, Oscar. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I would, I just want to make sure it's 26,400 that we put towards this event.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a question, if I may. I don't know
Yes.
if you have me on the queue there.
Go for it.
I have a gentleman. I mean, yeah. Thank you. I have a different. I want to offer something different here. I understand this is going to be a bigger and better event. I don't know what that really means when we say bigger and better. In reference to what? And also from the standpoint of, I see it as an event that addresses a particular niche audience. I mean, everybody loves cars, but there's certain degrees of that love and there's certain degrees of that fascination and wanting to rub elbows with Emerson Fittipaldi. I mean, I'm not saying that's not a great thing to do, but I'm wondering what we're really, and I think I'll follow in what Allison said. What is it that we're really getting out of this from a commercial or activity standpoint? Do we have an idea how many people are going to be coming here? Do we have a sense of what impacts, positive or not, will be to our economy in Key Biscayne? Does it make sense to do events for a one niche audience and pay all this money? I mean, I'm sure everybody wants to meet somebody. But I'm also still failing to see what the benefit is for the community, except just seeing nice cars. I know you want to foster that, and that's wonderful, and that's your passion, sir. But there's a lot of people in Key Biscayne that don't share that passion, and maybe they want to see something else. And I'm not saying that it's not a bad idea to do something as elegant as this, and I'm sure you'll have a crowd. But what benefit does it bring to Key Biscayne? I guess that's my bottom line on it.
Mr. Manager.
Do we know?
So look, I think this is one of a portfolio. This is one of a portfolio of about 16 different community programs and events that we do on an annual basis. We all know the Piano Festival. We all know the City Reads. We have Zero Waste Culture. We mentioned that Trap, Neuter, and Release. We have the Children's Business Fair. We go through a very rigorous process beginning in May, when we ask the community, for ideas, and they submit letters of interest. We evaluate them. We go through a process. We actually have a 5-person evaluation committee that looks for unique and different programs, but at the same time, making sure they're programs that are going to provide value, but also can sustain themselves. Because remember, the intent of this is really to nurture these programs, to begin and kick them off, and at some point, hope that they can take this thing to the next step themselves. Go on with a sponsor, and obviously, present themselves and promote themselves as individuals. So this is just one, council member. This is just one of about 16 different programs that we provide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fernando, go ahead.
No, I'm not. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. I appreciate the manager's comments on this one, and I appreciate the fact that staff goes through a rigorous process and identifying what the best events would be that fulfill the community needs. But I'm not really seeing much. I mean, maybe I'm not the car fan, and I don't mean to. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that, affecting the car fans out there. But I would like to know what we're getting, except just meeting Emerson Fittipaldi. I mean, I don't know. This doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
Sully, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I mean, look, just give you an example. F1 race is one of the biggest festivals of motorsport racing in the world, and the reason why is because just attracts the right crowd, and it's not only the car lovers. Like, you have a lot of celebrities that attend this. You have a lot of women that attend. For example, this year we also going to do a fashion show with a local, resident group of fashion designers, so we can tailor to women as well, right? So we are always trying to expand our programming to involve different tastes, different
I'm
interests.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I apologize. You just mentioned something that I wanted to understand. You also mentioned there's a fashion show included in this show.
Yes.
That's part of
Seems like
the
a whole
charity
bunch of
part
things,
of this
Oh,
event.
okay, I got it. Okay, that's a charity component. Okay, all right.
Well,
got it.
no, I'm sorry. I apologize. So the fashion show will happen at the Monaco Square. It's going to happen on the Saturday evening. And again, the reason why we brought in this fashion show is because we wanted to tailor to ladies as well, right? We wanted to give a little bit more, diversity in our programming. So because we partner up, for example, with Daimler Furstenberg the very first year, and we had some programs from them as well. So we just want to again expand so that it's not only about the cars. We want to create a big community event that again there's a lot of different interests that we would like to satisfy. So,
Okay, so
yes, that's another
to
thing.
discern where you. To discern what you're saying, I mean, this is not this is just a whole bunch of shows, I guess, put together in trying to.
But
this again, that's where I get a little lost.
What do you mean, bunch of different
fashion
shows?
Show. What are you creating a smorgasbord of different shows? Is that what you're proposing?
No, so we have on Saturday the whole day. There's a programming, right? There is Emerson driving in with the car. There is the everything that happens on the green. There's going to be a test drives with that new Lotus, the electric car, and then one of the things is the fashion show for the ladies. So again, we just brought it in so that we can widen our event to more interest. So we're yes, the cars is the main thing, but if you look at F1 race or any other Pebble Beach or any other concourse event, there is always these side programs that kind of benefit the main event. So this is when you ask what you can grow, how do you see this bigger, this is what we want to bring more different programs. We want to introduce again maybe the carts for the kids so they can be able to drive. We want to there's like just different things. We have a live music performances, so it's not only about the cars. This is the cars are kind of like like a main event, but then there's a lot of other side events that we have around it.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and I'm not going to belabor on the point, but I think that we need to really understand if we're really, how is this benefiting our community?
Fernando, I think
financially and culturally. I'm going to leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Fernando.
I think something that would help, I think it's just coming back to what is the mission of it, right? So you're having all these things, but I like what you talk about getting kids involved and it's a sport and how they get in. That interests me, right? So there's a mission and then you're having these other shows that are coming in to draw more people to deliver that mission. So I think that's where I get a little unclear, that I didn't have a strong mission of what it is, the purpose of why you're having this. I thought it was a charitable event, but it seems to be a little bit more than that. And I think that if that's a little bit more clear, I think it may answer Fernando and make people feel like, okay, that's what the mission is. You guys are trying to achieve this with that, and that's great. And it also does many other things at the same time, but there's a main purpose for it.
No, 100%. And again, so the very first year we did the history of Emerson Fittipaldi, plus we did the cards for the kids, right? Last year, we did exhibition at the City Hall for the history of motorsport racing. So there is like this educational component that we're educating people. This year it's going to be Lotus, because again, Lotus has a huge history in motorsport racing, how they came about and the whole thing. So we're going to do the history. So every year there is educational component around the cars and history of cars and all of that. So that's very important for us. And again, we've done 2 of them already, and now this one again we're doing it. So
okay, Mr. Vice Mayor, you want to
I think Fernando's inquiries prompt me to observe this. I have no question about the suitability of this relative to our program to support clubs, institutions, activities that benefit the community. Allison alluded to what I think we all had a little bit of a problem or cognitive dissonance about, which was the relative prioritization of competing
Right.
asks. And I think the methodology that we strove to effectuate on that is good. It's helpful. It took away a lot of the kind of hat-in-hand presentations and also some of the subjectivity out. But we're left with the conviction that we might need to participate a little bit more actively prior to the decisions being made. We have a lot of knowledge about this, and the people that serve on the committee, I think, don't have as much knowledge and perspective as we do. So that I just wanted to add that as my big issue.
So maybe what we can do, Vice Mayor, is maybe we can step this process back a month next year. Maybe kick it off in April, and then maybe tie in a period where we can talk to the council about it, and we can then discuss which ones we would like to based on our recommendations and what might be the appropriate amount of funding.
I think we'd feel more comfortable with the ability to participate prior to decisions being made.
I think that sounds like a great idea. Yeah. I also think an additional suggestion when we do our strategic planning for the year, maybe for us to really try to hone in on what our priorities are for sort of this bucket of money for the year so that we're sure that things are in line. And also hopefully it will alleviate uncomfortable conversations like this when someone is coming doing a nice thing for the community and is made to feel like it's not something we're behind, because that is not the case. We are very, very grateful, and I know everyone is going to have a wonderful time, but we still need to figure out how we're dealing with this process internally.
Absolutely. So, we're really thankful to you guys because, for your time and support. This is, again, we're here on the same team. So.
Okay, so we need to go on. The last thing I'll say, I haven't spoken on it, is let's make sure that you bring the community together and not separate the community. It'd be very important, whether it's with the people that are part of this or your sponsors, that this is Key Biscayne is very special, and we want events that bring people together, and let's make sure that we can do that. Thank you for being here tonight for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing National E-Waste Day.
So, a young 8th grader asked me to work on this as part of the resolving Girl Scout issues, okay, and so I'm very pleased to have done this resolution. I'll just read a couple of things from it. And can you tell me the young lady's name again?
Anya Gupta. Anya Gupta.
Gupta, thank you. And the focus is on e-waste. And we do on Key Biscayne, we do have an e-waste event where we are able to get people to come out and deposit that type of trash, and that happens in April. So I just want to remind everyone, but this is a nice proclamation that this young lady who is working by herself to do all this through her school and through the Girl Scouts. And so I'm happy to say that it's important that all village residents become involved in e-waste recycling activities and learn more about the many recycled products and packaging available to them as consumers. It is also fitting for the village of Key Biscayne to celebrate National E-Waste Day to help ensure safe and healthy environment and an improved quality of life for present and future generations. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Joe I. Rasco, Mayor of the Village of Key Biscayne, do hereby declare October 14th as E-Waste Day in Key Biscayne. So to my friend Anya Gupta, thank you for making this happen and making us aware of e-waste. Thank you. Obviously, he couldn't be here. All right.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda.
Move.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. All right, let's look at the
Opposed?
pulled
Motion
items.
carries. Pulled item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, accepting a Florida Department of Environmental Protection FDEP Resilient Florida grant in an amount of $885,626 to complete the 30-100% design of the Zone 1 K8 Stormwater Basin Resilient Infrastructure Improvements Project and approving an agreement related to the same, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. London, you pulled it. You wanna go for it, please?
He's on mute. I think he's speaking, but he doesn't know he's on mute.
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. I don't see how we can approve ACOM going forward when we as a council really haven't decided what we want to do. We're shocked to $300 million. I think we're waiting for alternatives where we can come and decide what the community wants, what we want to spend, what benefits we get before we design something we might not want. So I don't think it's really appropriate at this point in time to move forward with that. As much as I'd like to see the project as quick as possible, I want to support it, to redo it.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Brett?
No, I agree with Ed. I have that in my notes that, you know, what the construction costs are going to be, what the design cost is going to be based on the parameters that we're still deciding. I did ask the manager, again, that came back to the question of flexibility. If we accept this, are we flexible if it becomes less? Yeah. And I think that was my biggest concern. And he told me, I think, manager, you might want to, I don't want to put words in your mouth. My understanding is it is flexible.
Okay, anybody else before? Yeah, but let me so that you can do it all at one time here.
All at once, right. I think it'd be useful to be reminded about the bifurcation, what we were calling A and B, within this scope, because I think A, the first part of this, which pertains to this, was the deemed to be rather inevitable baseline work that was going to be needed regardless of the later decision that's attending B. But it'd be useful to clarify that and make sure we got that right.
Okay.
So
Mr. Manager.
Introduction, and I'll let Colleen take over on some of the details. So big picture, and I want to make sure that folks know what this specifically is for. This is for the design. This is not for construction. And as you know, we've given a presentation for the modeling in August. We went through with each one of you over the last month. We're going to move forward, have a community, a council workshop on the 26th of October. So this is really moving forward to the design. So this is really the 30 to 100% design. The $885,000 is just one component of it. We also have right now earmarked a $3.88 million state revolving fund as well. So that's the big picture, and I'll let Colleen kind of talk you through some of the eaches and specifically address your flexibility question, council member.
Yes, the FDEP gave us funding to do 30 to 100% design. How we get from 30 to 100, they're not terribly concerned about how we break up the work orders or the steps that we take to get there. And we didn't specify exactly what that 100% is going to be because the process by which we get there inevitably involves iterations of design and decision making before we get to 100%. So they're totally fine with providing that funding without us specifying exactly what the end product would be because that's sort of a part of the process.
And based on the parameters that we may change, is that going to affect the design cost?
If it affects the design cost, it doesn't change the funding amount that we receive from them. We have a 1-to-1 match obligation, so the 885 and change is what they give us. We're required to provide an equal match. We can use our SRF loan funding as that match.
So if let's say the cost of the design went down to 1.4 million,
then we wouldn't use the full 885.
so we're flexible on that. We would just give them back portion?
Make sure that
Okay.
we would use the 885. We wouldn't use the state revolving fund because that's free money.
Well,
We have to do
885
we have to do a
times-
one-to-one
we have to do a
match.
one-to-one match.
Yeah, so we would use 60s.
Yeah, so that extra piece
we
we
would use
can-
this money first.
What do we do with
Yeah,
that extra?
yeah. So
what do
we
we
would-
do with that extra? Just wondering.
They want to give us 50-50 split.
Okay.
So if we
Up to a
decide-
maximum amount of that amount. So
Right,
if we do
so-
something less, then it's fine.
Yeah, the
Okay.
only instance in which we wouldn't receive the full amount, it's a reimbursement-based grant as well. So usually
Okay.
when we submit reimbursements, we submit 50%, we cover 50%,
Those were
the agency
Yep,
covers.
That's all I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay. I think that answers the questions.
Is the answer Ed? For Ed?
I don't think that's my question. How can you go ahead 30 to 100% when you know what you're going to do at this point in time?
Can I jump in on this one, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Fernando.
Because, yeah, I think I'm not sure if there's a misunderstanding of what we need to do. That's what design is for. That's when we figure out what things need to be done. And that's when we develop the product. I don't think we would really have a foresight or knowledge beforehand of what the design should be before starting design. So I think it's a very logical approach. It's not cheap. There's a lot of work that's been, that has been latent for years, and it needs to be done. I do have one bit of, it's not a concern, but I would like to see more clarity on the outfall point, because it seems to me, and I repeat this before, and it's important for us to have a defined outfall point that satisfies the full flow coming out of the K8 base and not be only able to meet 25% of that. So I leave it
Fernando,
at that.
we're going to get to that on 8E, okay?
Mayor, can I
Okay,
make
gotcha.
a comment
Okay,
to
yep.
Ed really quick? My understanding that what's in front of us right now is accepting a grant when we do the 30% to 100%. We're not approving to start 30 to 100% in this item. This is just when we do approve it. So the question I have then, what Ed posed is there a time restriction here? Do we have some time to still adjust what we want to do before we start 30%? And this grant is not going to have any issues with that.
True, yes. We have plenty of time within the grant period of performance to complete 30 to 100% design, and this is approving a grant agreement. This
Yes.
is not approving a 30 to 100% design contract.
Okay. Hopefully that answers Councilmember London.
And I might as well do it now. We were going to do it later, but let me run through quickly what our suggested timeline is between now and the approval to go to 30 to 100. So obviously we're here today. Roland will get up here in a little bit to talk to you about what we're suggesting to be work order 3 alpha. That'll be some additional modeling as well as some design support items. We have on the calendar on October 26th the council workshop to discuss some of those modeling results. Soon after that, we'll have a community meeting to kind of give an update so the community understands the direction we're going in. We'll come back on November 14th to ask you for your preferred modeling alternatives and scenarios, which will give guidance to AECOM to move forward to bring to you, hopefully December, but more likely January, exactly what we needed to go to for approval from 30 to 100. So right now, our target is to bring to you in January of next year the approval for 30 to 100%. So the next 4 months is where we'll be focusing on getting us and right-sizing that to move forward.
Okay.
Well, excuse me. So are we signing a new work order with AECOM?
Not right now.
Not on this item.
Not on this item.
You talked about modeling. Are we signing a new work order for modeling?
Not under this item, council member. There is another item coming up later in the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All those in favor of resolution 8B, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think that was
Fernando, that was an aye, right?
That was an aye. That
Okay.
was a yes, yes.
Yes, the technology has a little delay to it.
Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving and accepting a stormwater drainage easement agreement with Nicholas Molina relating to the property located at 425 West Mashta Drive, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Moved and seconded. This item was on the consent agenda, but we just want to highlight this is an important taking a step forward, which is very important. Go ahead.
So just to remind everyone, about a year ago, Jeremy Kosgarger, Director of Building, Zoning, and Planning, you all passed a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that allowed some square footage within a home to be moved from elsewhere in the building up onto the third level. So in exchange for granting access for a stormwater easement. And this is the first example where we're actually executing that and coming to an understanding. So this is for a project that is near the Mashta Bridge, is really a future project as part of our overall stormwater plan. It's not, for instance, immediately in the K8 basin, but it's an incredibly important thing we're doing to sort of lock these in for the future. So I think one of the things that during the presentation that you all received regarding the overall plan, one of the things that came out to light and that they've started to run the numbers on is what a large deficit we have on how much water we're sort of landing on the island and how much water we need to move into the bay and where the heck that transmission exactly goes, because we know exactly how the pumps work, we know how to collect the water, where our shortcoming and where sort of the critical path element is literally the drain from the pipes, which can be pressurized and can move a lot of water, but then that water has to slow down before it gets into the bay, so we're not scouring it out like a fire hose. So the trick is we need these easements, and we need a lot of them, and we need sort of maximum amount of linear footage along the waterfront to drain that water out in a way that's safe, and we can get good water quality, and we won't be damaging the bay. So this is the first step.
Okay, very important first step. There are two others that you're looking at?
So currently we are talking to a couple other property owners that are actually much more adjacent to the K8 basin. And I think the other item that was presented to you all during the workshop was this idea that, maybe a straight line pipe coming out to the bay isn't enough to have that water that's under pressure again sort of slow down and come out into the bay. So what they're looking at is something called a diffuser box, which is, think about it like a shower head. It's a stream of water getting into broken up into slower moving streams of water. And what we're looking at for that is really something that would take up most of a seawall on a waterfront property. So when we're going from asking for an easement, which is really something that sort of sits in the side yard, it sits outside your buildable footprint, it's really in the side yard setback, to something where it's like, oh, wait a second, this is affecting something where, my pool is adjacent to that, I want to dock a boat there. I don't know if the incentives that we have generated so far will be sufficient.
We've got to start somewhere.
We started somewhere.
Okay.
And I think we'll need to come forward with discussion, and I think probably a public meeting to start to think about what folks are comfortable with in terms of sweetening the pot a bit more on some other properties.
Council, any questions?
Yeah, I just want to maybe recognize Nick Molina for being the first one to step up, a good neighbor, setting an example that working with you guys, and thank you guys for working with him and getting that deal done, and that's the benefit for the entire community.
No small credit goes to Jake Osman on this one as well.
Thank you to Jake wherever he is.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, what we're essentially really trying to do is pre-position the village to take advantage of opportunities as they arise. In the specifics relative to Zone 1 and K8, there's two particular properties that are currently unbuilt. One of them we already have an easement on with an existing outfall that we would love to try and maximize before the property is actually built out to make it easier and less disruptive to the owner of the property. At that time, we'd also be speaking to them about the possibility of adding a dissipator box. And similarly, on another property at Harbor Circle, unbuilt, the property owner is also strongly committed to the village and doing right by the village. What Nick Molina's done is basically shown sort of the path forward for that to happen. In those two instances, if we were able to successfully get two dissipator boxes, K8 Zone 1 operates 100% from the get-go, from the day that you turn the key, to the point that you could possibly even move water towards K8 and close the discharge deficit in other areas. So it's a really important step, and we're doing our best to try and find these opportunities as they pop up.
Good job, staff. All those in favor of Resolution AD?
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor, I believe there's a hand up there on the screen.
Fernando, yeah.
No.
You guys, hand up.
Fernando?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. And really, it's not affecting the vote. I just want to make sure, first of all, I really want to thank staff for this, and I would appreciate from the residents as well, stepping up and helping us all do a better job for our community. That speaks volumes. And what I really wanted to talk a little bit, just briefly, and just a recommendation to staff, then when we look at these potential easements, also look at the bathymetry in the water to make sure that we will have the right elevations, or that and the seawalls too, because, we are committing, and we're, they're granting us an easement, but we're going to be responsible for that seawall, and we're also going to be responsible for the flow line of that pipe. Be it small or not, I think it's important for us in our due diligence process to evaluate the bathymetry and see if we really have, if it's doable. That's what I'm really going at.
Yeah.
Do we have all the parameters for the design in the future? Not just the easement, not just the space, but the capacity, and not impact to the bay. And it's not, this may be the case that it's perfect, but it wasn't spoken about, so I just want to bring it up. And thank you. Appreciate the time.
So I think there's actually, it's worth noting that the ordinance that was passed partially addresses this, not as specific as that, but none of these are granted sort of solely by the BZP director. It's always in consultation with the Public Works director, so that we're not just giving out these incentives except in instances where it's in a place where we really need it. And part of looking at what we need is the due diligence to make sure we can execute it.
Okay.
That was all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
The next item is the second reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, creating Article 8 of Chapter 2 of the Village Code of Ordinances, establishing supplemental open meeting procedures, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
The ordinance is moved in front of us. By the way, I want to see which of you can spell bathymetry, okay?
It's a sign of how far we've come that we know what it means.
In order to fulfill our obligations here, I must open the public hearing on second reading. The public hearing is now open on ordinance creating the article of the supplemental open meeting procedures. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is now closed. The item is properly before us. Any questions to staff? Allison, you want to remind us what we're doing here?
Yes. So this was a result of the amendment that was passed, the charter amendment. We went through it the last time at first reading. I think it just basically belt and suspenders to make sure that our community really has full access to their government, right? So that the concerns that we had heard about sunshine meetings were that maybe it was difficult to know where they were being held or when they were happening. So this gave, above and beyond the state requirements, it gave some additional parameters that we set upon ourselves just to make sure that our community has full access to what happens among this body.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say that we would have wanted to take this action regardless of the charter amendment. We've recognized the need to come into the 21st century in terms of communications.
Well, and I think also, just for the benefit of people watching, one of the things that I like about it is that it's every time a new council forms that it gets passed again and adjusted, and I think it'll help to keep things current as technology changes, but also it serves to sort of focus the new council on the goal and the directive of wanting to make sure that people had access and felt comfortable coming to meetings.
Okay. Village Attorney, anything you need to add?
I think that's it. We're
Okay.
good.
Madam Clerk.
Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
Councilmember Ross.
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius.
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Roscoe.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember London.
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance is adopted on second reading. The next item is an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the evaluation and appraisal report-based amendments to the comprehensive plan, providing for transmittal, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Been moved and seconded. This is the year report to the comprehensive plan, and I will now open up the public hearing on this item on second reading. Public hearing is open on the ear, not to be confused with your normal ears. So, seeing no one come forward, this public hearing is closed.
So, good evening again.
Tell people what the ear is, please.
Well, let me take one step back and remind folks what the comprehensive plan is. So the comprehensive plan is really the master plan of the community. It, in addition to a lot of background research, it lays out what the goals, objectives, and policies of the community should be and what it should be acting towards. It's a somewhat lofty document in terms of it's aspirational. A long-term document where ordinance could be drafted towards meeting those goals, policies, and objectives. So per state statute, every 7 years, you're meant to reevaluate this, and that's in the form of an evaluation and appraisal report. So there's been a long gestation period for this particular item. So the initial report was prepared by a consultant, and that was adopted by council. The recommendations the report was adopted in 2018. So what you have before you is the second reading where we're implementing the recommendations adopted in that year, that evaluation and appraisal report. The first reading was back in August of 2022. In between versions, we sent it off to the state for comment. They provided a letter officially saying, there was one change that needed to be made in order for it to meet their requirements, and there were a couple of additional recommendations. So the sum total of that is primarily a lot of relatively minor changes that were included in the evaluation and appraisal report. A significant new section which state law required in 2015 regarding the peril of flood. So this is just more of an emphasis on the risks of building in floodplains and handling that. That goes into one of the sections of the code or of the master plan. And then there was also a state statute requiring a property rights element be incorporated. So this is sort of a lot of minor changes at this point that are summarized in those three different elements: the original report that was adopted in 2018, and then those two newer sections of code that state statute required.
Okay. So, changing it from last time to this time, from first reading to second reading, I see that there was an objective. I'm trying to find it in here. Do you know what page it is on, or is it under property rights?
Yeah, the property rights element is word for word taken from the state statute that we were required to incorporate into comprehensive plans.
I just wanted to find it in here because I know you and I didn't get to
page
talk.
61. It's the
Thank you.
very last
It's the
page.
last page. All right, because it's very hard to find. Okay, object 1.1. The village. Okay. All right, I see that one. And you included all 4 comments that they gave? You put them all in?
So there was one that was requirement, and the others were recommendations, and we did pick up the recommendations.
All of them. Okay.
And I just want to clarify one thing that Jeremy said, is that the department found, they received and determined to complete our first reading package on May 16th, 2023. And why that's important is we have 180 days to adopt this, unless we got an extension from the state. So I just want to make clear that we're within that window still.
So we're meeting that requirement.
Correct.
Okay. Any, yes.
I want to get this adopted. This may be the greatest protraction in any action taken in our history together. But the coincidence of the Senate Bill 102 occurred to me when I was reading through this. Is there something that we ought to speak to better present our prospective sensibility and compliance with what might be coming at us down the pike?
I think that that's something that should be examined. I don't know if it has to be done in this document, because I do think we should move forward. And I think we should consider, though, looking at our comprehensive plan and addressing SB 102, the Live Local Act, because one of the elements of it is that the administrative approval is subject to the application being otherwise consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we could amend our plan to help to deal with the effects of SB 102, but I wouldn't want to hold up this process, which is, as you mentioned, has been protracted.
Let's get an agenda item on that. I think it's important that we think this through carefully now and not be whipsawed later.
And just to clarify, we actually are not allowed to otherwise modify our comprehensive plan until we handle this. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So you want to bring that as an item on another part of this, but appreciated your comments. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius.
He stepped out.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Roscoe.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember London.
Yes.
Was that a yes? Yes. Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted on second reading. The next item is an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 30 Zoning and Land Development Regulations of the Village Code of Ordinances by amending Section 30-4 Zoning and Planning Application Fees relating to cost recovery, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions on this? This is what we dealt with in the local planning agency.
Yeah, I do have a question. So it does say that if it requires you guys to outsource, when does that trigger? Because if somebody's submitting and then you're putting the fee onto whoever submitted it, is that because of the size of the project, or is it just because you're overloaded with work and you need somebody else to work on it? Because one of my questions, I just want to make sure they're not getting double charged, right? If our guys are not reviewing it and it's being outsourced to somebody else, there shouldn't be an additional fee. But if it's a sizable project where we're doing the work and we have to outsource, or the outsource is much bigger than what we were going to do, I'm a little confused on how this works.
And I think the easiest way is to with an example, is to explain with an example, and an example that's here and that I've seen in other municipalities as well, which is, for instance, the entry block. We had a traffic analysis that was part of the study, and it is very typical, since the traffic engineer is hired by the team presenting the project. It's very, very common to have that traffic analysis vetted by your own engineers or a third-party engineer to make sure that there isn't bias sort of built in to it. And in fact, it's fairly normal to get into a little bit of a battle between the traffic engineers regarding methodology and that sort of thing. So in that case, for instance, we did outsource, and we brought in an expert regarding traffic analysis, and in that case, we paid for it.
So. Okay, so I understand that, and a lot of cities do this, where when we submit for a site plan and it needs a traffic study, and we check that box, there's a fee that they have to pay up front directly that's outside the permitting and everything like that. This is like a separate fee that you would have to submit. Are you saying that without this change, you guys could not say, hey, if you need traffic analysis, you need a noise analysis, whatever analysis, there's a fixed fee for this, and this. That's what it's going to be if you're going to submit. You have to pay it, or you're not going to be able to go through this process.
Well, what this does is sort of generically set up a process for recouping fees, and our ordinance actually calls for more specific information to be set by resolution. So we might need to come back with a resolution to get more specific. But having having this in place, for instance, would have helped us be in a position to recoup that cost.
Yeah,
and that is the intent. This isn't meant to be like outsourcing my job, or that where staff isn't going to do the work because we're going to hand it off. This really is for exceptional cases where you could imagine coastal engineering being required, whether it was an oceanfront or bayfront property. On a sizable project, something like that. Those kinds of examples, noise analysis, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and recouping these fees is something that's very standard in the industry in many departments. Anyways, they pay an upfront fee, and then later on they come back and say that's how much it costs, and you have to pay the rest of it at the end, or somewhere in the middle. So, okay, I just wanted to make sure this is not, somebody putting in money and expecting a service, and there's a higher price that comes back all of a sudden. So
no, and they have a reasonable expectation to get a level of review from their base fee. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
So,
yes, Mr. London.
If I understand correctly, maybe I don't. This would only be for services, consultants, analysis that we would not normally do in-house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It wouldn't kick in if we were busy.
No. It wouldn't kick in if we were busy. We're never too busy for a site plan review or variance analysis.
Okay. All right, as required on the ordinance, on first reading, public hearing is now open on this ordinance. Public hearing is open. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. Madam Clerk, on the item 9C before us.
Councilmember Sardinius.
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez. Councilmember Vasquez? Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
Yes.
Yeah,
Councilmember
that's a yes
McCor-
on me. I'm sorry, I had it on mute.
Okay, thank you.
So, apologies.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
And Councilmember Ross?
Yes.
Ordinance is approved on first reading. The next item is a ordinance on first reading, an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 30, Zoning and Land Development Regulations of the Village Code of Ordinances by amending Section 30-73, Site Plan Review Procedures relating to voting procedures, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Ordinance is before us. Let me quickly, I will open the public hearing on this ordinance on first reading. Public hearing is now open. Seeing no one come forward, the public hearing is closed. Yes, we have this, Mr. Director.
Yes, so this is once again in response to the process for the entry block, which went through the site plan approval process. But I think, generally speaking, folks had hoped that there would be a little more time to process, make comments, and have those comments be responded to. So at council's request, we drafted this to create an additional step in the process. And we looked at more formal and less formal approaches, where one would be sort of through a local planning agency process, and it would be a sunshine meeting and the works. And then looking at other municipalities and working with Weiss Serota, recommending a site plan review workshop, which is a slightly less formal process, but would still be a presentation of all of the same application materials, would have been vetted by staff already. But then, it is a slightly less formal process, so that hopefully the process would be a little more free flowing. And we included a 14-day period in between those two steps. And look, this is the minimum. I would expect it to be more typical of a little bit of a longer process, particularly so that, if for no other reason, so that they can reply properly and take in suggestions. So the 14-day should be considered a minimum. Of course, applicants will always push to move quickly, but I think that'll be really dependent on the workshop schedule, and we'll try and schedule those earlier rather than later, so that there's always time.
Okay, is this the Brett Moss ordinance?
Well, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is important. As an architect, we hate going through these processes, right? I mean, it's just another thing that we have to go through. So
you're doing it to yourself.
I have to take the architect hat off and put on the community hat. But at the same time, there is no. I have not worked in any city where it's this easy to come through and get something approved. Many of them are extremely difficult. I'm not saying that we should be difficult, but we do need a little bit of time for the residents to be able to see what's going on, for the council to digest what's happening. And I think that this is an important process. I like the idea of keeping it as simple as possible, but allowing there to be time to elapse for people to have questions and for them to respond. I would say that the 14 days for me is way too short. I was thinking 30 days, a minimum. The reason why is that we typically ask for the drawings when it's coming to the agenda about 14 days. So the time that we meet with them, they're already putting it on the agenda. I don't know how they can even respond. You need at least 14 days between the 14 days. So that already puts it out to 30 days minimum right there. So I would say 30 days is probably the minimum that we should go there. But I like the idea that it's a workshop. It's an easy flowing process. We have the questions, people can listen, people can have input, and then we make a really good decision by the time that council gets it.
Let me ask you this. Is there a difference between a complicated site plan and a very simple one?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would say that the larger projects that would be in the commercial zones and multifamily would be much more complex than
But you see
a
where
single-family
my
home.
question is going. I mean, you know, if you are in the very easy category, do we, you know, make you jump through more hoops?
Yeah, I mean, look, we could say single-family homes may not fall into this category. This is everything but single-family homes because pretty much every other one can have a pretty complex. You really don't single-family. You really don't want to get them tangled up into many months of going through a process. Even though many cities do that, I don't think that's necessary. So I would be okay with excluding single-family homes. Jeremy, I don't know. We have not discussed that,
Councilmember,
but
they are excluded.
they're already excluded.
Yeah,
Okay,
excluded.
so if they're already excluded, I'm fine with it. And I think the other ones, you know, again, like I said, Key Biscayne is very unique that one commercial property affects, you know, whatever it is, 10% of the characteristics of our of Crandon Boulevard. So that's a huge impact. Other than City of Miami, they changed one little property. That's 1 in a million, and nobody notices
Okay.
it. So I think we have to take some careful consideration.
All right, Mr. McCormick.
I thank you also. I'll echo Brett for bringing this because I definitely think this is a step we need. Do you have a reaction to his suggestion of 30 days? It makes sense to me with the agenda.
I think it's reasonable. I think we might want to look at calendars just to say, like, is this something where we anticipate it lining up with, you know, one council meeting then the other? Which case maybe we do 28, 26 days to give ourselves, I know because it's not always 30 days between meetings. That would be my only suggested.
But it's a minimum of 30 days, so we can give them the minimum. They can space it back a little bit to catch the next council meeting. I don't know. They can go more than 30 days, right?
Yeah,
If they want
yeah.
to.
I mean, we would be setting minimums.
That's why we would suggest something like a 26, so you could hit one to the other.
Okay.
Because sometimes our separation is a month apart, but it's not. You know, it's Tuesday to Tuesday, first week. Sometimes.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah. If we want to do 28 days.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we effectively get to the same place.
Yeah. Same idea. Council meeting to council.
No.
That's what you're looking.
Good idea. Yep.
Ed has something. Go ahead, Ed.
Can we basically set a maximum? Is it 30 days or the next council meeting, whichever comes later?
It'll be
Or
worse for them.
not just put this out, like in 3 months, 6 months, God knows how long the whole thing's up.
In other words, the next council meeting, but with at least 30 days lead time.
But that can put them out 2 months.
The only issue
that's
that
worse.
might come up with setting a maximum is if somebody comes with a proposal that has very little support but they're given a path forward to make some changes where they can get there, and sometimes those changes might take more than really they would only have about 2 weeks to make the changes or even just a week if it was a 30-day spacing, because they need to resubmit all of their content and get it in time for us to look at it and for you all to look at it. So there are going to be, even with relatively minor changes, if it's anything that is substantial enough to alter drawings, that sort of thing, it could be 28 days is already a pretty tight deadline in that scenario.
Yeah.
But the clock would start on submission. So if there's a revision.
But if there's comments made during the workshop that influence the design, I mean, it's doable. I mean, I'm sure you've made some quick changes upon submittal through and getting comments from a public process before official submittals. So,
Well, I think the idea is that if you bring in a site plan that everybody likes, you know that the next council meeting is going to get approved and it's moving, right? If you get a lot of comments, you're not resubmitting in a week. You're taking that off. You're going to go back. You're going to work on that. And you might come back 2 months later because you need that time to put together because you came with something that is not agreeable at all. They need to put some more work into it. So sometimes people submit just to see what the reaction is, and then they pull back and they go back to the drawing board to see what else they can do. So
We don't have an architectural review committee and architectural standards, do we? And if we don't have that, and they comply with all the other requirements, what would the difference be if we didn't like the way it looked?
I don't think it's necessarily just looks.
There could be access.
Yeah, it could be access, it could be, any
So
number
we
of things.
comply with all that. We don't like the wait books. What authority do we have?
Well, we have criteria in our code that whether or not that's how the council will view the approval or denial of the site plan. It's whether or not the criteria in the code for site plan approval are being met. I can go through the criteria if you really want, but we have 6 standards that it has to meet.
You know, the one that jumps out is compatibility. It's very subjective, but there is that.
Do you hear that, Ed?
But Ed, I think the difference, it allows the residents as well to understand what's happening in the community. It's very rare that people come in with a site plan approval that gets approved in a moment and nobody even knew that happened. This allows them to come to present it and allows the community to kind of understand what's happening, and they can voice their opinions, whether they like it, they don't like it, why, that kind of stuff. You know, if there's no legal standing and the developers want to continue and there's nothing that we can do about it, they still have that. But I know it's not good to go to a small community, develop something that 90% of the people don't want. That's not a good position to be into. I think that most developers want to come and do something good and that people want, and I think they will listen if there's a big issue, and if there's not, then it goes through. So I don't think it's a huge thing, but I think it gives time for people to understand what's happening in their community.
Mayor, may I make one observation?
Hold on a minute, Ed.
I've seen this work very well in a lot of communities. I think in this community in particular, since we don't allow for ex parte communications, this is an opportunity for the applicant to come and hear all of you and get your feedback collectively before they go and actually go for a vote. So a lot of times applicants like this feedback because they get this through the process, and it helps their final approval a little bit easier because they already have some of your feedback. So
I think the most recent example points to the need for something like this, and that I think we were frustrated with the first and only bite at the apple was a vote. That really didn't work well for us.
Yeah, because you feel unfair if you block them at that point, because you're like, they made it all the way to this point and you're going to say no. This is a way of saying, let me hear first, and that's the process, you know, and it's not a surprise to them.
So if we want to amend the ordinance, is that what we want to do at this point, or we do that next time we have the ordinance before us?
It's within your purview. Either way works.
I like a friendly amendment to make it
just the amendment now. Yeah.
The lead time would be at least 30 days or the next council meeting, but not less than 30 days.
I don't know if that solves what we were trying to do. 28 days would be the...
That was
I like that 28 days because it's always going to be on a Tuesday to a Tuesday, and it gives you always 4 weeks. I could go with 28 days because if you do the way that you mentioned,
you can miss it.
You can send somebody 2 months out.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, if that happens. So I would say at least 28 days, which gives you the 4 weeks. It can't be 3 weeks. If a council member the council meeting comes in 3 weeks, sorry, you got to wait. But 4 weeks, you have enough time.
But it puts a burden on you to schedule so as to, on a Tuesday.
You mean for the workshop? Well, it has to be before that Tuesday. You could be on Monday. It could be the following previous week. Is fine.
Well, it could also. We usually do it during a council meeting. It could be the half an hour or 15 minutes before a meeting on a Tuesday, and then 2 weeks later on a Tuesday we hear it.
Yeah.
And again, minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
No less than 28 days.
I'm good.
Okay. So who amended it?
I second Frank's amendment.
As amended.
It's 28 days, right?
28.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Attorney, we need to vote on the amendment first?
I think you can approve it as amended.
Okay. So, any more discussion on the item? Any more discussion on the item?
No.
Okay, so, Madam Clerk, on the item as amended.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember London,
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius.
Yes.
The ordinance is approved as amended for first reading.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I want to take up 10E, since we have people in the audience here for that.
Okay. A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving a variance request for the modification of a non-conforming dock to permit the dock width to be expanded from approximately 4 feet to 5 feet in width on property located at 740 Harbor Drive, providing for findings, providing for recording, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Mayor, this is a quasi-judicial public hearing. And we'll need to swear in anyone who would like to speak on this matter.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are giving this evening is the truth? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Director Jeremy.
Sorry about that. So this is a request for an expansion of an existing non-conforming dock. So they have an existing dock that is sort of a pair of, it almost looks like an F reversed. It's like a L-shaped dock with an additional leg in the middle. And as part of the dock renovation, they want to expand it 1 foot inward. But because it's an expansion of this existing non-conforming space, they need a variance in order to do that. It's a pretty minor expansion, and it's on the inward side of the dock. So we saw no reason to object, and recommend approval.
Discussion on the item?
Did we have a plan of it, or I didn't see any plan? I just wanted to.
There was we sent everything in the packet. Was it 12 days? 12 days. So that was like the previous Thursday, and then
I don't see it online or here. I don't remember.
It's useful to have a drawing.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
I didn't get it.
No, I didn't
No.
get it.
you did.
It was sent via email.
Yeah, we send out per council request 12 days beforehand.
It was
Send
I think
out.
it was 11 days when that arrived to me.
It didn't make it in the packet.
Do you have it that we can put it up or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can share the screen.
I don't see it.
So let me. No, I have a PDF on my screen, but I don't know if I can share my screen directly. Yeah, I need to get it from here to here. Mine's the HDMI.
Okay, so while you're doing this technical difficulties, let's bring up the applicant, or are you speaking on behalf of the applicant?
The owner and I'm this contractor.
Okay.
And
You need to.
I'm sorry. What I wanted to say, it's illegal.
Can you put your name and address for the record?
Just say it.
Angel Miguel Aixara, and 931 Harbor Drive, Key Biscayne. It's a legal non-conforming dock because the dock was built like 50 years ago when it was in Dade County, so it is allowed by Durham the way that it is. It just doesn't apply to the new village code where it is no more than 20 feet out. Also, there's 2 current docks. We're going to be removing one, so we're removing the inside dock to make the outside dock 1 foot wider towards the seawall. Right now it's 47-foot dock. At an angle, we're going to add 1 foot. And
So you're not going
I'm
out
not-
further.
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah, the outbound distance is the same, and so we're building it inwards. And it's a very narrow duct, we want to make it 1 foot bigger. And we're gonna raise it also because of we made the seawall higher, and now we want to lift the dock another 1.5 feet.
You made the seawall higher?
We did, we went to 7.5.
How about that?
What height?
7.5 and GVD. Pretty much all the houses I'm doing nowadays, we're doing that.
Okay. Imagine.
And, sorry, and you're getting rid of the other?
Yes, we are.
Branch.
We're actually, the net area, we're gonna be like 350 feet because we're taking off like 30 feet and we are adding 47 or something like that. And we're way within our 500 square feet, which is allowed.
Okay.
Durham is okay with it, and
Well, that's a big one.
Okay.
I have a question maybe for the homeowner.
Yes.
Just putting it out there that we are seeking easements for stormwater. And since you are doing work on the property, if you wanted to think about it and speak with Jeremy, it would be a huge service to your community, and we have other people signing up to do it, and we would be so grateful.
Okay, well, I'm happy to talk to Jeremy, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Is it to make outfalls?
Yes.
Yeah. What is east or 10 feet, 5 feet?
Side yard, what is it, how big?
Usually we're asking for 10. That's ideal, and it's within the setback. So it's not in a place where you're not able to build, it's also not like any place you're allowed to store your boat, even on that water side.
Okay, you need to have that conversation
Yeah,
separate.
sorry, I just, whenever I meet
But-
someone who's doing work
thank
on
you.
the water.
Thank you for reminding me. Ed or Fernando?
Nothing.
You're good? Okay, Fernando?
I'm good, Mayor. I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good, thank you.
Any further conversation on the item? Mr. Attorney, you need?
Just open the public hearing and we're good, I think, if there's no more discussion.
Okay. Public hearing is now open. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is now closed. Anything else?
I don't think we need to wait for them.
Okay.
Seems simple.
It's a resolution. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to our
10A.
order of business. Yes.
A capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the purchase of protective ballistic vests from Federal Eastern International LLC in an amount not to exceed $73,268.64, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Items properly before us. Chief, you're looking for vests?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, council members. The vests have a shelf life of 5 years, so in order for us to be able to get it in, we need the council approval to be able to spend the funds. All the officers have already been fitted by the manufacturer. It's the same manufacturer that's been used in the past for vest purchases. So with your approval, we'll be able to move forward and get the vest manufactured so that they can be ready before our current vest allotment expires.
And you are doing this without asking for money?
That's correct. It's going to be coming from forfeiture funds, so it doesn't cost the taxpayers money.
So those forfeiture funds, can you use them for anything else?
No, it is designated through state law and what you're able to use it for. Most of the time, it's for equipment related to public safety.
So this, in your opinion, is the best use of this money at this time?
Yes, sir. For the amount of the expense and the purpose of what we're buying it for the safety of the officers.
Talk a little bit about the safety. What will this vest be able to do?
So the vests come with rifle plates inside of them. The manufacturer has gotten a lot better throughout the years because they were a lot heavier. They are much better designed for comfort level, and obviously for obvious reasons, it can stop a bullet. So it's a necessary component of what we do.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Moss?
So a couple questions. So it has a shelf life of 5 years. Why is that? Is that the warranty? Is it just that these always every 5 years have to be replaced? What is it?
Industry standard, every 5 years, the bulletproof vest has to be replaced.
So what do they do with the ones that you have now? Do we throw those away? Can they be reused? Does another department buy these? I mean, what?
You can't reuse them because the warranty doesn't cover it, as you indicated. A lot of the time it's donated. Like I can tell you the last allotment of bulletproof vests that we had here, we donated them to Ukraine.
Ukraine. Okay. Okay. And this new one that we were buying is also going to be a 5-year thing, and we have to replace it. There's
Every 5 years, you will have to replace the bulletproof vest.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Vasquez, Mr. London.
Are there many manufacturers? Or none? Or one?
I think he said, are there other manufacturers?
There are. This is under state contract, which is the best rate you're going to get out of any vendor. And this vendor supplies, I'd say 98% of the state. They're local, they're in-house. If we need to make customs, alterations, or adjustments, which as you know is an agency of our size, we have officers that leave. We don't buy them a new vest. They get the vest that we have that we ordered today. So there are times we have to make alterations, and they're local here to us, and they provide an excellent service to our municipality and other municipalities in Dana Broward County.
Have we ever taken any bids from other suppliers?
Did you take bids from other suppliers?
No, we didn't. This is under state contract, and we've used them the last 2 times. No one's going to beat them.
You're piggybacking on the state.
Yeah, we're piggybacking a state contract.
How do we know if we don't take other bids?
Because there's only one other manufacturer that does it, and their vest is more expensive when you add the rifle plate and what we're getting.
So you checked the market even though you didn't get a specific bid?
Correct.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Councilor Vasquez, was that a yes?
That was an aye, yes, that was a
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Motion carries. The next item is a capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the purchase of 4 police vehicles from Allen J. Automotive Management, Inc., doing business as Allen J. Fleet Sales in an amount not to exceed $235,000, providing for authorization, providing for the identification and sale or disposition of surplus property, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Item is properly before us, has been moved and seconded. Mr. Police Chief.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. We're asking for the ability to be able to purchase 4 vehicles. Unfortunately, I can't stand before you and say that the vehicle market in public safety is any better. It's actually worse. We're still waiting on 2 of our hybrids that we ordered last year. We just received delivery of 1 of the 2 pickup trucks last week, and these were ordered last October. I had an officer who had to be driven home the last week with a sergeant. So that's how dire our fleet is right now. We need to be able to purchase cars. You've given us the ability to do that, but unfortunately, because of the supply chain, we're unable to catch up. Ford is not making hybrids next year. So our option was to go with the F-150 or a Dodge Durango. So it's not getting any better. It's getting worse.
What's the EPA mileage on these?
So the Ford F-150 that we are proposing to order is an EcoBoost, which means that it alternates with fuel efficiency. It gets 19 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway.
How does that compare to the one you have now?
It's off by like 3 or 4 miles.
So you're improving a little bit the...
Well, we're going to improve over what we have now. The pickup trucks that we have in our fleet right now are 11 years old and constantly being maintained.
Okay. Questions? This.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Dex Imaging LLC for copier machine rental and maintenance services in an amount not to exceed $98,525.07 for a 63-month term, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Mr. Police Chief, how do you go from vest to photocopy machine? Are these the new things where you're creating the product now, or what?
It's the joys of being a small town police chief. You learn a little bit of everything. No, normally this would fall under our IT director, and he was instrumental in helping me. But being that he is transitioning into this role and into the budgetary process and doing these purchases, he sat with me as we went through the process, so he was instrumental in this. What really started this process is 2 of our machines in the police department were not working, and they were out of warranty. And then when I sat with Benjamin, our CFO, we discovered that out of our 9 machines, several weren't aligned with being under contract at the same time. So in interest, as I think we've proven to as a staff here in the village, we said, hey, let's put this out to the market and see what we can get. So we reached out to Canon, our existing provider, we reached out to Dex Imaging, and we reached out to Toshiba, and we got 3 quotes. The positive parts of this is that it's going to standardize all of our copy machines. So out of all of our 9 existing machines that are going to be replaced, we're all going to have the same machine now. In addition to that, the bid includes the toner, which in the past we had to buy. It includes all service calls. Dex is a local company with local reps that respond. I can tell you in the last 3 to 4 months, I've had a guy, bless you, I've had a guy in our office at the police department at least once every 2 weeks fixing our machine. So this is something that's critical. It does save us money. We were paying, I think it was $1,740 a month. Now we're going to be paying $1,563 a month, and it's throughout the span of the 63-month contract.
And that doesn't include the savings on the toner.
That's correct.
Well, I was going to ask you, the previous, was that a contract we had before and the other one? Did you pay per printing or no?
We were paying for color.
And they didn't provide the toner, and they charged us to print each sheet?
Yeah, it was more expensive. So we are saving here, and everything's bundled into one. So it is a much better deal. Toshiba did come in a little cheaper. The reason why we chose Dex Imaging over Toshiba is we reached out to 2 other municipalities that went to Toshiba, and they eventually had to get rid of them because they couldn't keep up with the demand. The machine, although it's advertised at the same level as the Canon machine that we have, when we spoke to other municipalities, it doesn't do the same print per minute rate that it came advertised as. And in consultation with our IT director, who came from another municipality, and they went to that change, they eventually reverted back to Canon.
So I'm a big fan of Canon. That's what we use in our office, and it's been great. But I think 2 things. I think one, I don't know if you guys keep, and I asked Benjamin, I think he wasn't sure if we do this or maybe we don't, but it would be nice to know how many times we have to actually call people to come and fix a machine that's less than 5 years old.
Yes.
Because it may be better that we go out and buy these at some point. Maybe this is not this 5 years, but maybe the next 5 years we actually decide purchasing it and doing on-calls whenever we need is less expensive than paying this ongoing leasing, because I'm sure they're going to make money off of that. And I think the second thing is I think that we have to look at the culture here in Key Biscayne and look at the idea. I mean, in our office, we push very strongly that things are digitized and they're filed. We don't use the printer unless we have to. And, I think I've had the same ink cartridge for like 6 months. We don't have to change now, where we were changing it every 2 months. It's changed, and a lot less paper is being used. And I think that, I'm sure some departments are more digitized, others probably print everything. So we need to start moving that culture over so that we don't have to be so dependent on them. They're still going to be needed, but we may be able to have a much less expensive and efficient system maybe in a few years.
So I don't disagree with you. I think that's something the manager and staff members can look at. I can tell you it does vary depending on the department. You know, there are times in the police department that we're able to digitize stuff, you know, just speaking from my department. But there are times that we do have to print out stuff. We get numerous requests for police reports. We have gone away from printing them and sending them. We're able to fulfill a lot of our police reports with just sending them electronically, which saves time. But there are other things that are, we don't have a choice. We have to print and we have to give out. But I'll definitely discuss it. You know, the manager always recaps with us and we'll look at it. As for a log, I'm sure if I ask, at least for the police department, my administrative staff member, I'm sure she'll be able to tell me the number of calls we had, because I even had a discussion with Canon at one point because one machine was out of labor and they wanted to charge me $250 an hour to come out here.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, and I mean, we do this in our office, and I know it sounds little, but over many years it starts to add up. But we only print in black and white unless it's a extremely rare case that we need to do a presentation. It has to have a look, and we have to do it. Other than that, I don't care how it looks. We just need the information. We move on, and it's a lot cheaper to go black and white.
So the settings on these new machines that we're getting do set for black and white. To eliminate the cost of
I guess what I'm thinking about the culture is just making sure that the employees know, guys, you're doing this in black and white whenever you can, unless we need something in color.
Absolutely.
Instead of people just running color constantly. So, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So, Mr. Mayor, we're going to go ahead and make Chief Souza one of our assistant procurement officers.
Yes, indeed.
He's done such a good job
yeah.
today. He's got that extra duty written all over him.
It's a compelling presentation.
I'm sorry.
Where are we now?
I'm trying to. This is Mr.
10D.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to AECOM Technical Services, Inc. for pre-designed services relating to the K-8 school stormwater drainage improvements projects in an amount not to exceed $926,923.60 and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Items properly before us. Mr. Samimi,
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
you want to speak into the microphone?
This would be a follow-on to the workshop that we had back in August, where AECOM summarized all the results of their Work Order 2 work. At the time of the workshop, additional questions were raised by all members of council in regards to how we might be able to narrow in on a series of alternatives that would better balance the cost of the village-wide stormwater system upgrade and yet at the same time generate sufficient benefit in terms of level of service that the residents would be satisfied with. In order to do that, additional model runs would be required, utilizing the model that was developed under the village-wide drainage assessment. What we decided to do, just as a point of clarification, speaking to Council Member Kaplan's request, was rather than put forward a Work Order 3 that encompassed everything A to Z to get us to 100% design for Zone 1, K8, we broke up that work order into a 3A and a 3B. This particular item speaks to 3A. It includes the additional modeling that would be required in order to answer council members' questions on which would be the best alternative to go with, as well as modifying various parameters within the model in order to reduce the amount of volume that would have to be managed by the stormwater system. That's included in 3A. In all the initial design tasks required to go from 30 to 100% design, which would be covered under 3B, which should come before you in January, are included in the interest of being able to keep the schedule moving forward. So these are all initial design tasks that would have to be completed irrespective of which alternative we went with. And so that's included in this particular work order 3A as well. Those initial design tasks involve bathymetry and topographic surveying specific to the K8 discharge area. It also includes geotechnical work that needs to be done. It also includes preliminary permitting work that needs to be done, as well as environmental work that needs to be done. All that's being covered under this 3A. The amount of this work order is basically sort of a percentage of the total 3 work order in its entirety. So when you get to 3B, it's basically the balance of what work order 3 would cost.
And 3B will be the part that will have to determine what kind of outcome we want. But
Exactly.
This is,
So
I know you just said it, but I feel the need to say it again.
Yeah, for the benefit of the
3A doesn't change regardless of what
Correct.
we set the parameters at.
Correct.
But the work does need to get started and get going, so you split it in two.
Yeah.
So that we can start on the stuff that doesn't change.
Exactly.
While we determined exactly what parameters we want.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Which includes revisiting the assumptions that we reached 2 years ago.
Correct, and also based on the one-on-one council member briefings that we had, and based on the discussions that were had during the workshop, what AECOM is already able to start doing is changing parameters in the model, such as the amount of rainfall in 24 hours from 8 inches to 7 inches, discharge pipe velocities, runoff curve numbers, etc., to be able to figure out sort of, okay, which one of these parameters that when you change has the biggest effect in terms of reducing the volume of water that needs to be moved. And then they can combine those changes to then run these different modeling scenarios to then essentially you're narrowing in on what's sort of like an optimal alternative, an optimal design, where you're balancing the cost of construction with the level of service that you're trying to meet that is going to be satisfactory to people, but might not have been the level of service that they originally started with, you know, a year ago when council instructed them to move forward.
Rowan, would you, and I know we had a one-on-one meeting with each one of the council members, would you just go over those 6, 7, 8 items just so they can, they'll be very familiar from when we had the conversation with them, so they understand the variables we're looking at.
Yeah, so some of the things that they're able to dial, for lack of a better word, is lowering the rainfall amount that the system needs to basically move within a 24-hour period. So that rainfall amount is going from 8 inches to 7 inches, and that's justifiable because a 10-year, 24-hour storm per the South Florida Water Management District generates 7 inches per 24 hours, not 8 inches per 24 hours. They're also going to modify the rainfall distribution in the model. They're going to modify the runoff curve number, which is sort of the rate of infiltration that water sort of penetrates into the ground surface. They're also going to change the contributing area. So it's how much contributing area the model sees that generates runoff as a measure from the right-of-way line back into people's properties. So that's going to change from what it is now in the model, which is 100 feet, to 75 feet, and they're going to see sort of like how that affects the runoff volume. They're also going to modify sea level rise target year to 2040, so it's kind of like an incremental evolution of the system. Instead of modeling and designing for conditions in 2060, they're going to basically design for an incremental evolution of the system, starting with conditions in 2040, and then over time it'll sort of start seeing 2060. They're also going to modify the outfall discharge velocity, which right now is set at around 1.5 to 2 cubic feet per second. They can sort of change that and elevate the rate at which water comes out of these outfalls. That'll have implications in terms of permitting, but nevertheless, it's something they can do. It's like a self-imposed restriction that we've put on ourselves, so they can change that. So these are all small little decision points that can be modified within the model itself that then ultimately changes the amount of water that's being generated in a 24-hour period, which is then, you know, affecting the cost of the system construction as a whole, but then also relates to level of service. And that's another point that they can look at, is changing the level of service, whereby instead of having all the water constrained to, say, the rights of way and the roads completely clear, now they can look at it in terms of like, okay, so maybe for a certain number of hours per rain event, you might have, say, 6 inches at the lowest point in the crown of a road, but it'll be clear in a couple hours. So they can, they can adjust that all as well. So they're gonna essentially do all these different modeling scenarios under a task of 3A. They're gonna run it through all the various alternatives that you've seen during the workshop, and then they're gonna run through the estimate of probable construction cost to see sort of how all these different modifications then affect the overall construction cost for the ultimate build out.
And the intent out of this really is to find the optimal solution between cost and performance, right? So if we run these models, we start narrow in on the variables that make the significant changes, and then that's when we come back to you all with, again, what we'll be able to do at the workshop, or is that too soon? The October 26th workshop?
October 26th workshop, AECOM's already starting to adjust some of these modeling parameters to kind of see which ones have the biggest effect on changing volume. And then based on those findings, we'll have the workshop, we'll discuss all these different findings, and we'll lay out a very specific set of scenarios that you'd like to have them run, which then they would carry through to all the way to estimate construction cost. But nothing about what they're doing in 3A locks in any particular alternative or design path, which would be under 3B. So this is all the stuff that is needed to answer all the various questions that you had about, well, if we change this, and this in the level of service, how is that going to affect the construction cost, the ultimate construction cost, not just for zone 1, but for all the zones. So this will enable them to answer those questions, and then based on that, they get specific marching orders to then go through all these very specific scenarios to get to estimated construction costs, and then that comes back to you, a discussion is had, and then ultimately in January, when 3B comes before you, then at that point you have a much better sense for the direction that you'd like to send them in. And then at the same time, we're working on whether or not we secure these extra easements with dissipator boxes. If we do, by the time 3B comes to you, we'll already know that we have them or that we don't. And if we do have them, then it becomes very clear as to sort of what road should be traveled under 3B to get to 100% design and then construction.
Mr. Mayor.
Questions?
Ed.
Joe?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Roland, a couple of things. One, doing the 8 inches or 7 inches, but there's also all the inches below 8 and 7, which are also inconvenient to people. And I think it would be helpful, in my opinion, to get an incident as how often these events take place. In other words, do we have a 6-inch occurrence 5 times a year, 10 times, 5-inch, and how inconvenient will that be to people under various scenarios? Because when we talk about a 10-year scenario, a 5-year scenario, 8-inch, 7-inch, they seem like the extremes. But at what point does the incidents happen, which is really inconvenient to people, the residents, as far as mobility, transportation, etc.? And if they add that to the study also, and then we could get an input from the residents, what is important to them versus cost versus comfort, so to speak.
That's a good question, Councilmember London. And you may recall that one of the discussion items at the workshop was whether or not the system should be designed to a smaller design storm, because a 10-year, 24-hour event that generates, say, 7 or 8 inches in 24 hours is a relatively rare event. What Tom McGowan explained about that decision point, whether we should do 5-year 24-hour design storm or 10-year 24-hour design storm, was that most, if not all municipalities are designing to 10-year, 24-hour events specifically because of NFIP and FEMA and the desire to have insurance reductions through the NFIP program and your CRS score. So ultimately, the thinking is really not to design to a lesser event, but to change the level of service that you will be provided for by the design that you ultimately choose to employ.
But the important thing is the cost of the service versus the comfort to the resident. The National Flood Insurance, FEMA, I don't think whether it's 8 inches to 7 inches or 12 inches is going to flood the homes, at least most of the homes. So really, I think the main thing is mobility, getting from point A to point B successfully and safely. And then again, are we talking about this work order right now that's only going to take care of this modeling, or is the modeling covered under the previous work order?
Certain amount of modeling was provided for under the previous work order. AECOM stewarded those funds relatively well, so they have some additional budget remaining under that second work order to do some of the initial additional modeling that they're doing now. Task Order 3A is going to then have another set of modeling scenarios that is going to then ultimately be worked up to get to what the impacts are going to be on construction cost overall. But in addition to that, they're doing all the initial design tasks that need to be done regardless of what alternative is decided for relative to designing Zone 1 and K8. So there's all this additional stuff that needs to happen before they start doing the heavy design tasks to get from 30 to 100% design. That's also going to be done under 3A, but doesn't lock us in any specific direction in terms of what that 100% design would look like.
Could you give me an idea of some of those tasks, please?
Sure. So specifically, we're talking about geotechnical engineering. We're talking about bathymetric and topographic surveying and mapping. We're talking about subsurface utility investigations. We're talking about contamination assessments. We're talking about utility coordination and undergrounding design. We're talking about additional hydrology and hydraulics that needs to be undertaken. We're talking also environmental surveys.
And things all have to be done before we go to 31. Is that correct?
They are all things that need to be done to go from 30 to 100% design, regardless of what that design looks like.
Are any repetitive of things we've done previously?
Negative.
Such as, you talk about subsurface utilities. I thought we went ahead and mapped our subsurface utilities. We now know where everything is.
No, we haven't done that actually. We did the LIDAR surveying. That was that detailed topographic surveying of the entire island. We did that already, but that didn't involve essentially identifying all the underground utilities.
So basically, we can't rely on Miami-Dade Water and Sewer for their surveys of what they have underground.
Well, I mean, you could entirely if you wanted to, but it would not be advisable because they don't necessarily all know what they have underground.
Duplication, but that's all.
It's not duplicative. It's really just making sure that you know what's in the ground before you actually start designing around and digging through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Vasquez?
Can I speak?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, and really appreciate the fact that staff went through the process of briefing every council member and going through this exhaustive process. I did want to mention a couple of things that I thought maybe we should be aware of or just try to really focus on. I know we're modifying or looking at some components to reduce the level of service. Let's bear in mind as well that the residents spoke of a certain preferred level of service in the past. So if we're going to do that, then I would hope that we would have a rediscussion with the residents and actually, or be able to, I don't know, I mean, we had a survey based on this and folks spoke loud and clear on what they preferred. So if we're going into directions like that, I think we need to be sure that the residents are okay with that change. And also, if we're going to make any modifications from, going from 8 inches to 7 inches or whatever it may be, we also have to be aware that, or be true to science, or be true to, what Councilmember Lennon was saying, is really understand what the historic rainfall events are, not go back to 1950s curves and use those or minimize that runoff. That's one component. The next thing that I really want us to talk about is this design. And I've expressed this over and over again. I'm very concerned that the design that's going to pick up the flow at the K8 is going to not be, it's going to come in at 200 CFS, 250 CFS. We're only going to be able to discharge 40 cubic feet per second or something like that. We need to be sure that whatever is delivered to the community is a full acceptance of all the flows that are coming in from the place that we're picking them up from. Otherwise, we run the risk of having a fatal flaw in our design. So let's work hard on that. Let's make sure that we deliver to this community a product that serves the purpose of this project, not just to, only be able to discharge a little bit of it.
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah.
Moss.
So a couple of things. Before we get to that, I did talk to the manager about this. What's the amount of this work order that's going towards the modeling?
205,000 out
All
of
right.
900 and I think 65,000.
All right, so about $200,000, and I think we need to get clear on the decision making when we can do this in order to reduce these types of costs, because I remember asking at least twice to Jake when he was here that I was worried when we made the parameters and we voted on it. The first thing I said, but we don't know the cost, so how can we make these decisions? And I asked Jake very clearly, we will have a chance to adjust these parameters during this 30% design. Yes. And I said, it's not going to cost additional funds for us to make this changes. No, this is part of the 30% work order. And I said, okay. And I remember asking it again at a second meeting to ensure that is, here we are making changes to the parameters. And we have another $200,000 coming onto it. Now, maybe the parameters are more intricate than just the 3 or 4 that we put, because we're looking at more and maybe that costs. But we do have to be careful of that, because if you guys are telling us that this is part of that work order, we shouldn't be hearing more coming in unless, okay, these parameters are part of the work order, but since we're doing these additional, it's going to cost this much. And I don't remember what the original work order was, $400 and something thousand, or
no. Well, for the village-wide drainage assessment, it was about $265,000.
So the original was $265, and they're going to charge us another $200 just to run these models, right? Or no?
That's correct.
It's almost double.
But I would also add, Councilmember Moss, that under the existing work order that they had to do the village-wide drainage assessment, they also have garnered funds to be able to modify little things. But at the end of the day, when you start making a lot of different modifications, there's a lot of different permutations that could possibly be modeled. And modeling takes time, and there's a dollar aspect to time.
So I get all that. What I want to make sure is that you guys are giving us the right information, saying, hey, if we're going to make these adjustments and parameters, there will be an additional cost. So we know. I was not under the assumption that was going to happen, and that's why I kind of got shocked by this. I said, what is this? They told us twice that this was going to be part of that 30%, and here we are. So I want to make sure you guys are giving us the information. Our consultants are giving us information like, that's not part of it. We're going to do this. That's going to be the end, and there will be when you do the adjustments, so we know.
Well, bear in mind that as we move forward in this process beyond Zone 1, each zone may require some little bit of modeling to understand if we do this in this zone, this is what the effect's going to be, and we want to. That's why we developed this tool, which is the model, to then be able to incrementally along the way change things as need be, see what the ramifications are, and then adjust if necessary as you move along. And you know, you can't a priori say, you know what, I'm going to need 100 model runs.
Yeah.
You start with, you know what, I've been given a task, a mission, level of service, meet this level of service, these design parameters, these boundary conditions. We're going to set up with a suite of model runs to explore those parameters, those boundary conditions, and that level of service. And we will provide the results of 15 model runs. And that's what you start with. And then based on that, you adjust as necessary. But you know, an engineering firm can't just say, okay, well, you got an infinite number of model runs.
I'm an architect, I understand.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I just want to make sure that the information coming to us from this podium is accurate and correct. The answer should have been no. There would be more cost if we were going to make these changes, so that we know, because maybe we might have want to meet really quick before you guys started to have a discussion, but that was not my understanding. So I understand the engineering side and the cost. I just want to make sure that we're getting that correct information when we ask it. Second, the parameters are super important. I think what Ed London had set up there, I agree with him 100%. I asked the question, and we had the meetings with the engineers, how often do we have a 10-year 24-hour storm? Historically, in Key Biscayne. And they came back, I believe it was 32 years, we've had 4. So you have to understand the rarity of a storm of the size that we are designing to. And if I have it wrong, they can correct me, but I remember in my head it was 32.4.
You remembered that correct.
It was correct. Okay, great. Now, obviously, there's moving factors going on. You know, Roland will quickly tell me that they're intensifying, they're happening more often because of changes in the climate, which I can agree with that. But it's still very rare, right? And we have to understand that, you know, and I always use this analogy. I grew up in the north, and we would get that big snowstorm once every 10 years. What do? You stay home. No school, no work, you figure it out, and then you're back up and going. You know, we don't up in the north try to heat all the streets so that every time you have that one big snowstorm every 10 years, you have a nice clean drive to work, and if schools are all open, it just doesn't happen. It's not feasible. So we have to understand the feasibility. Now, what Roland said...
Can I ask you a quick?
Sure.
Was 4 storms in 32 years that exceeded 8 inches, or that
exceeded the 10-year 24-hour storm or higher in 4 times in 32 years.
Mr.
Either met it or exceeded it.
Oh yeah, no, that's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That met or exceeded.
According to the record, that is, you know, that's correct.
Okay, so what I'm getting at,
looking backwards. Yeah, now looking forward.
No. I'm just trying to understand the number. The number is
once every 10 years almost, but yeah.
4 events in about 32 years.
4 events, 32 years.
But exceeded what?
The
10-year, 24-hour,
which is a peak amount of 7
to
inches
8 inches
in an hour.
Okay, so that's what I was saying. 8 inches.
Yeah.
In 24 hours.
So these are extreme events, right? Now, FEMA and the insurance and all this kind of stuff, they require us at a minimum to start with that storm, which is an excessive storm. That's fine. We have to do that, right? But what we can control is the level of service during that storm. And if we're going to say on a storm that comes so rarely, we want to make sure that our streets are dry in 20 or 40 or 50 years out from now is extreme, right? We're really going at it on a very rare occasion. So what Ed is saying, and I agree, we should design to the 10-year 24-hour, but we can take a lot during that time. But we should also look at the smaller storms, not that we're designing to them, but we need to go to our people and say, okay, a 5-year 24-hour storm will happen 4 times a year or something, and a 2-year, whatever it is, and this is what it's going to be like while we're designing to that 10-year 24-hour storm, so they understand what we're really dealing with, because in our heads, we're doing the 10-year 24-hour storm, which is so rare, and we're thinking that's the one we're going to get 8 times out of the year, and it's not. And on top of it, what Fernando was saying is true, but he's looking at a very still picture. So we can ramp up things over time, because even if we do half of what we're designing, tomorrow our island's going to be dry. Even in the 10 years, so I mean, it's going to be dry because there's sea level rise. There's all kinds of things that we're projecting out. So even if we're doing a fraction today and build up to what we want to over the next 20 years or whatever, we're going to do a very, very good job to go out. So I think there's a couple of those parameters that we need to look at. The last one is houses being raised. So when I spoke to the engineers, they have a very stagnant model over 20, they went out to 2060, assuming that all the houses stay the same height they are today. But I think we know that houses are going to be rebuilt and they're going to be lifted. We control some of that. We can put policy in place to make sure that people do this. And if people are not raising, they have to be aware that in 25 years we design this, or in 20 years we design this, and you can risk yourself in a flood now. And that's on you because you need to do something about it. So we should possibly put in the model that these lowest lying houses in 20 years may actually not be there anymore. And it may be a different area that we're looking at, because the most important thing that we should be modeling is damage to property. Not so much how much water's in the street. For me, I don't care. If I have to stay at home for a couple days, stay home for a couple days until the water's gone and we're good to go. It's inconvenient, but it's rare. Couple hours. Okay.
Every time it rains.
I know he gets all the time. Don't worry. Whatever we're going to do is going to improve that. But at the same time, when you get this really, really intense 10-year, 24-hour storm, we're looking at the worst case scenario so that we don't damage people's property at a maybe different elevations, most of the lowest lying. So I think these things we need to make sure are considered in this model, because, and what I'm a little bit nervous, and this is a question I have for you, Roland, is if we're approving this today, I think we still need to discuss these 8, maybe even 10 items, that parameters before they start, because I don't want them to start doing it and then we're like, wait, we want to check this, and then they're like, oh, another $100,000 to do that. I don't want to do that. I want us to have this good discussion and understand this in how things are moving so that we can make a good decision on this area.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
You know, you touch on a lot of different items. And I'm not going to pretend that I remember every single thing that you just said, but a lot of what you just articulated, and I'm glad you brought it up, are specifically things that are going to be considered as they move forward with these additional modeling scenarios. And the little bit of fine-tuning that they're doing right now is really just sort of like a sensitivity analysis type thing, like which one of these individual things has the biggest effect. Now they're going to come back on October 26th and they're going to lay out some of the things that they've realized during this little sensitivity analysis, which they're doing with funds that are remaining from work order 2B or 2A or whatever it was. And then that's going to be brought to you, and a discussion is going to be had on all these different points that you just brought up to make sure that everyone's clear on exactly what specific modeling scenarios are going to be done, so that all these different questions that you have and all these different points that you just brought up are addressed, including the finished floor elevations and all that, which is specifically one of the things that they have listed out as looking to do. And then once everyone is like happy and on the same page after October 26th, then they move forward.
Perfect.
And they launch into all the detailed scenarios that you wanted to have looked at, what the cost implications are going to be and all that. And then that's going to be brought back to you. And additionally, on November 7th, we're going to have a community meeting to discuss all of this with the community as well. Hopefully it'll be hugely attended, and we can talk about levels of service and the rarity of design storms versus smaller design storms, you know, what kind of rain events you get 90% of the time, what the effects on level of service would be if we stuck with the volume of a 10-year, 24-hour event, but instead, you know, we put 6 inches of water on the road, across the entire road, at the lowest point of the road, and it clears the next number of hours. How do you guys feel about that? That's all going to be brought forward on November 7th when we have this community meeting. Then that is also going to, the results of that is going to be brought forward to you when they are done doing the 3A effort, and then present the results to you to enable you to then feel
Okay.
comfortable moving forward with 3B in January.
Okay.
I got Allison questions.
I had some things I wanted to comment on while Brett was talking, but then he ended up clarifying them himself when he went. But I look forward to both of these meetings, and I hope that we do get a really good attendance, because I felt that my one-on-one or one-on-6 or whatever it was really effective, and I learned a lot, and I was able to share things. But hearing Brett's comments, I realized you guys literally, it was like Groundhog Day. You had the same conversations with the 7 of us separately. And I look forward to an opportunity for us to share those comments together, because I had the same reaction with the lowest lying homes, that I started to do the math. It was almost cheaper for the village to purchase the few lowest lying homes than to design to protect them. You know, to use that as pump stations or whatever we needed. Not that that's going to happen, but we need to make those decisions, and we need to have those conversations together. So I look forward to both of those meetings, and I think especially for the public to be able to participate after listening at the workshop will be really important, because just the same way that we made our parameter decision based sort of on like pie in the sky, that's what people did when they participated in the survey. And now that we have numbers of dollars to put up against it, I think people will be able to really take a hard look at it and adjust their expectations, or even just understand the parameters a little bit more. So thank you.
All right, Frank.
A lot of good input. Won't tread on trodden ground. I think in addition, just a couple of observations. In addition to having numbers now, better estimates of what these things cost, I think I discern consensus among us, but also a much better sense in the community that, as Brett was talking about snowstorms a moment ago, historically we've lived, you know, with wet conditions, and we manage. And as long as the power's on, as long as you got lights and electric, you know, and air conditioning and the internet, you can stay home for a little while. It's tolerable. We're used to that. Among the variables, I think we probably did have the same conversation 7 times. Among the variables, in addition to maybe looking at the old Zork incentives for renovating as opposed to rebuilding, which has successfully achieved the policy goal of promoting a cheaper alternative for homeowners who want to improve their homes. We talked about maybe thinking of that as an anachronistic policy goal, because the real driver now ought to be more directed toward raising the low properties. In addition to that observation having to do with land development reg critical analysis, we talked about reducing an important variability in terms of requiring permeability. You know, what materials are available. They just asphalted, again, the Winn-Dixie parking lot. And I don't know if you felt the same way as I did. I think the last time the CVS parking lot was asphalted, we came to a kind of collective determination that this should not happen again. And it just happened again. So I think I'm ready to talk about regs on permeability. Lastly, in terms of diminishing the quantity of water that has to be transported, the concept of water gardens came up, inundation areas. It's a cost, it's an acquisition cost, but if it is plugged into the calculus of what the resulting decrease in cost from the engineering system would be, I think we'd like to know that. So I don't know whether they're taking that into account specifically as part of the strategy alternatives, but I think they should.
Well, I mean, I don't know that they are specifically. I mean, one of the things that they are adjusting is the contributing area and how much water the system would see from properties as measured from the right-of-way line inwards. you know, we're so very limited on space and permeable area that I don't know that it's something that would make a significant difference in terms of the volume of water that needs to be managed. But I mean, certainly it's something that we can discuss on October 26th. And if there's a way for them to sort of factor that into their modeling, you know, I think that that's within the realm of possibilities given the tool that they have.
If, for example, they could make a prediction on the groundwater level.
That they can do.
If the result, if the answer to that analysis is you could have every road and every surface made of permeable material, and it wouldn't materially help the drainage situation. That's something that they are taking into consideration. And essentially it's the modification of the runoff curve numbers that deal specifically with infiltration and how much unsaturated zone you actually have to represent storage of water, you know, before it starts to pond above ground level. So that's something that they're going to be taking into consideration. The challenge is that over time you're losing that storage volume as groundwater table rises as a function of sea level rise. So that's something that they're already taking into consideration. But in terms of like, you know, rain gardens and things like that, you know, from a water quality point of view, it could have a benefit, although they are going to have BMP treatment trains designed into the system. But from a volumetric point of view, it might not be that, you know, that significant in terms of reducing the amount of volume that needs to be managed and moved. I think for our public communications, dealing with these questions will be important, even if the answer is
and I think it'd be a perfect opportunity during the October 26th workshop to discuss these very clearly for the benefit of the public, because then they'll be watching it, and you know, that question that pops up in their mind would just be addressed right up front.
I guess last point, real quick, the 7 inches, 8 inches, it's interesting. When we talked about the inundation from the Memorial Day storm a couple of years ago, it was significantly less than that, which was an eye-opener for everybody. But it kind of doesn't matter because we still have to design, you know, to where FEMA's expecting us to design to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just at what level of service you're willing to go in those rare events.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, Fernando.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm in a place with very low bandwidth, and my internet keeps on dropping. But I think I just heard the answer, and I think I just heard Vice Mayor Kaplan just indicate that precisely the fact that even though you know, an 8-inch storm may be excessive, we really have to meet best management practices and adopt what the rest of our surrounding communities are doing. What I did bring up, the question that I brought up initially was that we are using and still using very old curves. I don't believe any of those rainfall curves have been updated. And I'm concerned eventually that with time, remember we are putting a system here not to change in a year, not to change in 2, not to change in 20. This is going to be here for a long time. That we design properly for a horizon, not initially what is affecting our residents today, but what will affect our residents tomorrow. And our system needs to be sturdy, it needs to be robust, and it needs to be able to handle not just the requirements that are set today, but also scientifically backed up rainfall curves. So that's where I'm having a little bit of a problem with, because I feel that eventually, we are kind of breaking ground on building a brand new system here. Let's do it right, folks. Let's do it right. We need to really think of the future in this one. The other thing, where was I? No, I guess I'm fine with that. I'll leave it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, one last shot here,
just,
Allison.
Fernando, the one thing that came to mind when you said that I liked very much in my 1-on-6 meeting, and I think Brett touched upon it, was this idea of them building the system so that with the future in mind, that it's adaptable, or maybe adaptable is not the right word, but that it's prepared to be expanded upon, like putting the vault in the ground that can hold additional pumps when we need them. Incremental, thank you. That's it.
Okay, I want to chime in. I agree. I think we all share the same issues about getting this right and having the modeling answer the questions that we have and that the public is going to have. So I can't stress how important that is, that we get that right. So if that has to, if one area needs to take a little bit longer, maybe that's it. But having said that, here on page 13 of the AECOM
proposal
project that we're approving tonight, I'm not at all happy with these estimated completion times from notice to proceed. And I think that it's up to staff to really, really, really push the envelope on these, because a lot of these things, as I talk with staff about, whether it be the Geosol or the KCI, these are things that are surveys or environmental things that we need to go and do. And all of these are easily done. These are not, we're not reinventing the wheel here. This is not about modeling. This is about having the different consultants that you need to do any project, regardless of what the variables are. So I need staff to push these numbers way down so that this can be done in a more effective manner.
Well, as much as possible, we're going to try and get as many of these things happening in parallel, not in serial. And so I think that will help accelerate the schedule a bit as well. And again, these are all things that we're front loading in the process of the 30 to 100% design. So we're not waiting for this additional modeling to be done, and then once that's done, then doing all the preliminary design tasks, and then going and doing the heavy 30 to 100% design tasks. We're doing the modeling and the preliminary design stuff in parallel, kind of simultaneously, to try and accelerate things. So we will work with AECOM very closely to try and tighten up the schedule.
Okay. Another shot. Fernando?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to kind of follow on coattails on this one. I think you made a very important statement. We need to build as quickly as possible. I did have a meeting with staff when we met at the last time on this, when the presentation was made. And one of the points that I tried to make was the fact that I stated a few minutes ago, was the fact that if we can do work that is outside of the critical path,
yes,
like,
yes.
you know, we know what the pipe is going to be. We know what the pump station is going to be. I'm not asking to discombobulate the entire design, but I think, you know, that's what we have a program manager for, so they can help us program the construction properly. That's why we pay the big bucks for Black & Veatch and AECOM to get their minds together and get this thing done in phases. I think we're going to hear a lot. No, it's got to be done. I agree, it's got to be done all at once. It would be preferable. But at the end of the day, we got issues related with pump stations and permittings. And the more we can get stuff built, the more we can get stuff off the critical path, I think the better this will be. And we're in the hands of top professionals. So let's challenge them. And let's help them get this project built.
Okay, great.
Now, my concern is that we're going to be in construction in 2024, 2025. We're just going to still be designing and modeling and designing, and let's not let perfection get in the way of success.
I couldn't agree more with you, Fernando. Mr. Rowland?
The only thing that I'd like to add to that, Councilmember Vasquez, is for instance, with these two vacant properties that exist in Zone 1 that could potentially take upsize outfalls in an area we already have an easement, we would certainly entertain the possibility of doing construction on those vacant lots, obviously in agreement and acceptance by the property owners. And that could happen and should happen before anything is built on those lots. So that is in a way speaking to your desire to try and accelerate things a little bit in a reasonable, rational way.
Yeah, I agree, Roland, and I'm not going to, we can always have an offside discussion on this one, but I just want to say one quick thing. We can do this project, we can do this project in phases. We can do it. It's just a matter of putting our heads together and getting it done.
Well, we'll certainly do that with Black and Veatch
so
and
please, that's all
AECOM.
I'm asking. I'm not, we can talk about it later.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I think it's important that we really put some effort in this.
Will do.
We
All
don't
right.
want to be in plans in 2024. I don't think that's going to be a good idea because the public is expecting this to be done. So we
Absolutely.
need to deliver.
Okay, as we have beat up 10D as much as we could possibly do so, let's go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councilmember London, that was a yay?
That was opposed.
What is what?
Opposed.
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 Opposed. Thank you, sir. Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting an amended fleet replacement policy, repealing resolution number 2019-6, providing for implementation and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion?
So I had to discuss an item that when we first put this policy together, I think I mentioned it, and I still have it in the back of my head, and it's not related to exactly what's on here, but I always thought, what if we made all the years one more? Instead of 7 years, 8 years. Instead of 10 years, 11 years. Would it be that big of a difference? I mean, we have a little bit lower, I think, use on our vehicles than maybe other cities do, and that's like a 15% more life that you might get out of replacing it too quickly. And I'll just kind of float this around to see if anybody would want to add, instead of the 7-year cars, we do them every 8 years instead of 7 years. I don't know. I know the industry standard is 7, but I know technologies are getting better, quality of cars are getting better. I was leaning when we passed this to try to push 1 extra year out of these cars before replacements, but just wanted to bring that up and see what anybody else thinks.
So are you saying that 150,000 miles in Key Biscayne are different than 150,000 miles elsewhere?
No, but I think the amount of, if we're doing less than 150,000 miles, 1 extra year, I don't think really makes a huge difference on the car. I've had my car for 10 years, and I didn't see it starting to have problems until about 9.5 years. So I think cars today can go a little bit longer than, and maybe, in these other cities, they're beaten up a little bit more. But hey, I'm bringing it up. If you guys, I always wondered if 1 extra year would be a savings of money, and maybe these things are in good conditions. Most of our cars now they're already talking, they're 12 years old, 11 years old.
Right.
An 8-year-old is still a pretty young car for what we're dealing with today. So.
Go.
Mr. London.
Are we really looking at what the cost of maintenance is versus buying a new car? And if we're keeping detailed records on maintenance, that type of items go wrong, I don't think a policy of yours makes any sense whatsoever. The only thing that makes sense is when maintenance expenses get excessive, buying a new car. And it might be 5 years, it might be 10, it might be 15. Each car is different. Everybody's own things. Get a refrigerator is supposed to last 5-7 years. It lasts 30. The next one only lasts 2. I've had owned apartment buildings where air conditioners are 20, 30 years old, and the next ones last 2-3 years. No predictability. So to me, the system doesn't make much sense. Look at maintenance, what your cost of ownership is. When the cost of ownership gets excessive, then you buy a new car.
Okay. A good point, interesting point. Mr. CFO, are you up there to answer that?
Sure, yeah, I want to address both points. The first is that these are targets, not mandates. And the reality is we passed this back in 2019. Here we are almost 5 years later, and we still haven't got all of our cars even in this policy. Obviously, we had supply chain issues that we could have never foreseen when we did this in 2019. So while the chief passed a resolution to buy new cars for the next year, he's still waiting on orders from the year past. So I'd like to get to the point where all of our cars are abiding by this, and we can come back and then say, to Councilmember London's point, what are those maintenance costs? Is 7 years the point where year 8 comes along and the maintenance cost exceeds what it would cost to buy a new car and amortize it over those 7 years? I will say we did look at other municipalities and best practices for exactly kind of when. This is how we sort of developed this guideline, is looking at those maintenance costs. We did a similar, we didn't go to council for this, we did a similar one when we looked at our IT policy and our laptops and computers, when we looked at what's the cost of a new one versus the time that that laptop was out of service getting fixed in software development. So it's something we're always sensitive to and looking at exactly that kind of analysis that you guys mentioned.
Okay, so, but to Mr. London's point, on this chart that you have here, could we add a maintenance percentage increase kind of component to it?
So there's two things, right? There's maintenance costs of an older vehicle, and there's also what the residual value is. Because I will say that if we ever get to the point where we have all our cars on the schedules, when you resale a car that's 7 years and at this number versus if we go to 8, 9, or 10, that's factored into it too. So in order of adding, I wouldn't add it to the schedule, but I think let us analyze where those operational costs are, whether it makes sense to adhere to the schedule or not based on those costs and the resale value at the end of its life.
Why don't we just require that anything that falls under here that you're requesting, that you did the analysis on it and that the maintenance cost is more than the replacement cost, and it's approved, and if it's not, then it continues on its life and it's checked on an annual basis until it is. Maybe that's what we could do.
Okay. Allison?
This is just a general comment, not specific really to this replacement policy, but when we start looking at cars and mileage as a determining factor of when we get rid of a car, I do think that at some point we're going to have to look at the fact that housing prices are going up so much that a lot of people, even with take-home cars, are moving further and further away. So and I hate to even say it right now because I know it's going to be like up in arms about take-home cars, but it does start to really affect the mileage that's getting put on the village vehicles.
And they have to be replaced more often.
And they'll have to be replaced more often.
Yeah, that's fine. But like Ed said, you could have a car with 120,000 miles that's kept really well, that works great, and another one that has 60,000 miles on it and has all kinds of problems, and we should replace it.
Or it's been in an accident.
Yeah. Why keep something just because it doesn't fall in here, it's less, but it's having more problems? We might as well replace it if it's...
And we definitely do exactly that kind of analysis. You could ask the police chief if he's got a car that's been in 5 accidents and whatnot. That's the first to be on the list, and it might jump another car that exceeds this list. And then I think this village, probably more so than any city I've seen, uses those old vehicles and repurposes them for, let's say they go from the police department to the Parks and Rec department, which are used more sparingly, but obviously throwing equipment or muddy baseball stuff on it. So we get as much life as we can out of these.
And does that go for this rescue trucks too? Because I mean, our rescue trucks right now are 12 years old, and we're writing in here once we go beyond 7 years that we'll attempt to remount the box. But that's what got me thinking of this. Why not say beyond 8 years? Is it a big difference? Because it's still much younger than what we have right now. They seem, one of them, I know they need to be replaced now, but maybe 4 years ago they were still functioning okay. Does that 1 year make a big difference, or do you guys still do an analysis and say, hey, we don't need to get anything new right now, we can get another year out of this because we did the replacement cost and it's good?
We'll also do the analysis before we bring a reso, obviously, to prove any new car purchase. I mean, the purpose of this wasn't to reinvent the wheel on the chart. It was to add the language that we talked about during the budget cycle to say, yes, these new fire rescues that we are going to purchase, the idea behind them is to remount them, to do 1 or 2 remounts to really get to a 20-year life. So that's really the only change in this from when we did this analysis. I think the analysis is still good. It's just that we've had trouble in these last 5 years being able to buy the cars and here just and really seeing if this schedule makes sense based on, you're right, the operational cost of maintenance and the residual value of the cars.
Yeah, I think in rescue trucks you also have the downtime, which is a big problem as well, right? The cost of that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, this can obviously be tweaked, and it should be tweaked, and I would hope that you get with Mr. London and see if we can tweak it some more. All right, Madam Clerk, we're passing. Are we passing this?
I'm sorry, it was
Yes.
just
Yeah, I
as
think
a
so.
clarification, were there any motions made for tweaking this item?
Well,
No, I think that we can revisit it if Ed wants to work with Benjamin later.
Yeah, then.
But
they
it can always
just
come
bring it
back. But I think we
again.
should pass this now.
We can
and
pass
have
it
this updated,
and tweak it and improve it as much as we want.
one thing we just learned is that the real life practice, in effect, will be consistent with the tweaks when they occur.
Exactly.
All right, so the items before us, we're ready to vote on it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, let's move to the question on the state lobbying contract, since we need to go ahead and take that up, and then we can finish up our business here. Before I take you, Mr. Manager, would you give us a recap of how we are here at this point on this issue before us?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. So let's kind of give you an idea of the situation as we know it right now. Recently, it came to our attention that when our lobbyists submitted a House Appropriations request through a Central Florida representative, not our representative, for a stormwater sensor and predictive analysis pilot test, they checked a box that stated that they had a letter of support from the village. However, they had no such letter. We found out about this from a reporter in Orlando Sentinel who reached out to us, who told us about the form. Obviously, we talked to them and said that there is no such form. And when that article was printed, an additional newspaper picked it up and added additional comments on top of that. So we know that this has put some concern on the council. We know it's put some concern on the community. And so I think we're here to discuss what are the next steps that we need to take for our state lobbyists.
And we have through different discussions with the lobbyists, they're prepared to do whatever we want to do on this issue, including this letter of basically a resignation if we want to accept it. And so there would be two topics tonight, is do we move forward with this acceptance, and then secondly, instructing the manager how to do an expedited process so that when we are doing this transition, that we get this right, and whatever it takes to do that, we need to talk about a little bit about that. Want to start over here, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So I think we've been dealing with this for maybe a week. The way I'm looking at this is at least me, I'm still in the process of what I consider to be fact-finding. Information has been rather trickling in. Some of the information that I've been gleaning over the past few days has helped to create either resolution on questions that I had originally or compounded questions that I didn't even think of originally. I'm still learning about what actually happened here and what the implications are. In the meantime, we're in the prep stages for 2024. I think that the service that we're talking about is important to our success year by year in dealing with Tallahassee. I would like to suggest that we push this, have a special meeting, allow a week, because we need to make a decision soon, quickly. Allow a week to really be intellectually honest and complete in assessing what happened and whether there's a backstory that we have not yet been able to articulate, what the implications are for our service provider in Tallahassee in service to our village, and make a decision late next week. That's the way I'd like to handle this.
Okay, Mr. Moss.
I mean, I'm fine with that if you want to do that. You know, obviously, this is something very new to us of this issue that just came about, and we need to take our time to understand it. I mean, I would be ready to make a vote today if needed, but if a council member needs another week, I think that's considerate if you need more time. I think also what we need to do as a third item is to be very clear to Steve, our manager, and to our lobbyists, whoever may represent us at any time, that when we set out our legislative priorities, those are our legislative priorities. Me personally, I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm not interested in being involved in third parties, grants or third party appropriation requests out there. I don't know if we've ever have done that in the history. Usually it's something that we ask for ourselves. If there's a third party company out there that has a great product, they think it would benefit for us, great, come here, present it to us. We'll tell you whether we think that this is something that's a priority or not. If we like it, it will come under our name and they can be part of it. But I don't think that we should ever be going under somebody else's name, which from my understanding, we did not approve that, and that was not something that was in our priorities, and there was no support there. So I think that clarity needs to be done in the future so that there's not any type of confusion or anything with any future representation that we have. But again, if you need another week, I don't know how that may affect our priorities either way. But again, I'm ready to vote if we needed to as well.
The public interest.
Excuse me. Let me get Mr. Sardinias and then.
So the trickling of information is definitely accurate. I'm not quite clear exactly of what happened other than there was a form that was erroneously submitted without our approval. I think it's important for us to be very clear moving forward with all of our partners of exactly what the priorities are ahead of time. The idea that we were being misrepresented here in any shape or form, I'm not quite sure, and I would probably err on the side of caution of allowing us a little bit of extra time to have a look and have a conversation with our lobbyists, each one of us, and then decide for ourselves and come back in a week.
So I am ready to vote tonight. I think if we're going to have extra time, I would like to hear from the manager how that affects our situation should we decide that we want to change our representation. How does the extra week affect us?
So look, this probably couldn't happen at a worse time. We are literally, basically we begin our preparation for session in August, which is why I present to you in late August what I believe should be our priorities. Obviously, you give me feedback, we get approval. And we, in essence, began writing these up at the beginning of September. We're in the process of developing the forms. We've already had, there's already in session. We've already been working legislation with our representatives, with the support of our lobbyists. So yeah, this is a very difficult time. Can we wait another week? Yes, but I'm going to continue. I have to continue that this is going to be the assumption that we need to move forward because we're going to get the best and the most out of them as we can. so that's the way I will act until otherwise told otherwise, unless told otherwise. But yeah, this could have happened at a worse time. You know, we are in, you know, obviously we are in a situation that we have to deal with the error. We have to deal with the repercussions that's happened across the community. But from a business perspective, we're in a quandary about where we go next. And that is difficult, but I think we can handle a week. I wouldn't want to go much further than a week, though.
Okay, and the other comment that I wanted to make, I agree with Brett and Oscar that we need to be very clear, but I don't want comments like that to sound like a criticism of the manager or staff, because I believe he was crystal clear. And I don't think that this situation is a result of him not being clear. So the situation is what it is, and it sounds like we might take some time to understand it a little bit more, but I don't want that perception that something wrong happened on our end.
Yeah, sure. Agree.
I just wanted to add, you mentioned worst time possible. What would be the ramifications of taking a vote today, assuming the vote goes towards terminating the relationship? How would that affect our current session and our appropriations today?
So we'd have to take two steps. One, in order to get a long-term lobbyist, which, you know, one of the most important thing of having a lobbyist is the relationship, right? So, you know, you normally do a 3-year with one extension, two 1-year extensions. We wouldn't have that luxury right now. So we would have to go out and find a lobbyist who's currently available, willing to take on clients, someone who we can pick up that rapport that's necessary to go forward with. My recommendation at that point would probably be to limit the stuff that we want to go after, because obviously making that relationship would have an impact on our influence. So step one, new lobbyist. Step two, once we're in that process, in order for us to have a lobbyist next summer when session ends, for us to go into subsequent year, we would have to put an RFP out in the December-January timeframe, which would be very specific about what we're looking for in the future.
And has there been any discussion of a transition? Should we move forward with the termination of the contract?
Well, I think if you read the note here from Converge, they're offering 2 levels of transition. One would be to continue through the entire session, if that is our choice. One would be to support in the short term. That's not one that they're super thrilled at, but then obviously, as you mentioned, see in the 3rd paragraph down, if we're willing to transition sooner, of course they would accommodate that.
If I could just make a couple clarifications. One is, I think an RFP is obviously the best practice, but I do think that in the time of need, if we needed to, we could utilize an exemption from our procurement process to select a lobbyist if needed. Also, a third step or fourth step is that our current lobbyist would need to withdraw, and the new lobbyist would need to register with the state also as our representation.
So to be clear, and that's what I meant for the first one, we would have to do a professional services contract, short-term professional services contract that would cover us through session, right? Okay. And then the RFP would be the long-term.
Yeah. As for me, I think that this becomes a distraction, and so I'm ready to vote on it here today. I understand my colleagues' desire to make a little bit longer so that he can be better informed. But yeah, I think in the end it'll become a distraction, and we want our lobbyists focused on doing right by us and making sure that the village continues to receive top-notch services for what we pay.
Joe?
Yes, Ed.
When I heard about this, I asked a few questions, and I asked Steve, were you happy with our lobbyist? He said, yes. Do you think he does a good job for us? He said, yes. I said, you know another lobbyist do a better job for us? Offhand, he didn't know, maybe. Since then, he's found that somebody will do a better job for us. I said, how does this really affect us that somebody checked the wrong box, said we didn't get a letter? how does that really affect us? How will that disturb us in this legislative session, getting grants and awards from the state? And more than likely, it won't affect us at all. So why are we all upset? Because people read about this stuff and say, wow, $3 million, and how this all happened, and Steve must have done this, or he didn't do this, or somebody else did something. I mean, this representative in Orlando, who basically has some other issues. So what's it really come down to? Why are we sacrificing a good relationship when we really have no effects against the village because we didn't participate in this? And I don't understand why we're even considering, to tell you the truth, at this point in time, especially when Steve tells you, by doing this now, assuming you get rid of the guy tonight, that you're basically going to have to cut back your wish list going forward because we're going to new people. We don't even know who the new people will be. So to me, it makes no sense whatsoever to terminate it now or a week from now. Thank you.
Well, partly that motivates my suggestion. At the same time, I think the public interest and our duty, frankly, is to be assured that we're aligned with partners that, you know, share our values and that represent us with integrity and so forth. I have not been able to conclude thus far that that is not the case with Converge. I don't find a reliable counter narrative to the notion that this was simply an error. But I don't know fully. So I will either defer, or if it's the will of the council to take a vote, I'm prepared to do that as well.
Fernando?
He had to go.
Oh, there you go.
Do we want to?
So just for a little bit more background, in the appropriations request form, the item read, is there any documented show of support for the requested project in the community, including public hearings, comma, letters of support, comma, major organizational backing, or other expressions of support? And the answer on the form was yes. And then it says, describe letter of support from the village manager of the village of Key Biscayne. You know, I would say that I don't disagree that the lobbyists did a good job for us. But, you know, this is an omission. And again, I think that this distracts us from our doing the job that we need to do in Tallahassee. And that's why, you know, I'm ready to accept his resignation and move forward. But, you know, I'm only one vote here.
Well, I agree with you, Joe. So do we want to make a motion to accept his resignation? I'll make it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
If I may, since this was not on the agenda, we can add it, like the mayor added it, but we do need to make a finding that it's time sensitive and there will need to be a roll call vote, which I think you've articulated why it's time sensitive because of the session, but I just wanted to put that on the record.
If it's appropriate to move to declare this as time sensitive, I do so.
Second.
Okay.
Amend the motion to wait a week so we can get more information.
Okay, so
There's already a motion on the floor that's been seconded.
can we?
Send a friendly amendment to that.
Can we? Okay, so for the sake of discussion, can we lay that on the table so that we can discuss the other motion before us? Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
Which motion do you want? I mean, it sounds.
The one that was already proffered.
Lay it on the table?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, technically speaking, a motion to defer, which is, I think, what Councilmember London is saying, it takes precedence, so.
I need a
procedurally.
second for Councilmember London's motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we've got two of our colleagues asking for additional time. What say you?
It's a detail in what the manager was relating. During this rump period, where I'm really focused, not so much on what happened, I think we've got that. I'm more thinking about the consequences that will derive from what happened. And it's not within my ability to know that without due diligence. So that's one thing. But in the meantime, they're still working on our behalf. So I'm not sure that there's a time or prep consequence to a week's delay. But I will vote tonight if need be. But I'd rather assess what the consequences, especially in Tallahassee, might be.
Ed?
Yes.
Yes, on the motion before us that you are partially proffering.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Did I get a second? I got a second. So now we're voting on that motion?
Yes.
Right.
Motion to.
Obviously, I vote for a motion to defer.
Okay, but it's different to, we're not deferring it. We would be going to a date certain within 1 week's time.
Well, I'll be returning to Miami on Wednesday next week. So if it could be Thursday or Friday, I'll be in town. And if not, I can zoom in.
Next Thursday.
Okay. If we were to go in this direction, let's look at a date.
October 19th, Thursday.
It'd be better for me on Friday, 20th.
Either way, it's good.
I can maybe call
Either
in.
one's fine with me.
I can call in.
You'll be out of town?
No, but if it's in the evening, my daughter probably has a sporting event or something.
Could we do in the morning?
Yeah.
We've done special meetings in the morning most typically.
Yeah.
So it's on the table. Let's take a vote.
What was the date? The
The
19th or the 20th in the morning?
What time?
Last time was at 9 a.m. I don't know if that works for you.
That's fine.
We can call in if we want to, though, right? If we're at work.
I would need a quorum of 4 in person. And
Put
the
me as
rest
a
could
call
be
in.
Zoom.
If we
See if
if we
everybody
can do 9:30, I'll be here.
It's fine for me as well.
9:30.
They'll call.
It's only 4.
9:30.
Ed will be back. Ed, you're gonna be back then? By then?
Yeah.
All right, so he'll be here. 9:30.
May I do
Should
a
we
roll
call it?
call? May I do a roll call,
Yeah.
please? Councilmember London?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Councilmember, Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Motion passes to defer.
So I'll have some very specific questions that I'm going to ask and answer. And they may be interpretive, but I'll let you know what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Unusual.
Can you repeat yourself, Councilmember London, please?
I said the fact that Frank and I agree is really unusual. That's.
Let it become a habit. That's right.
Yeah. Never mind. Can we go to? I have a couple of items under mayor and council members. I get a question a lot about the code enforcement and issues of people putting things in the swales that they're not supposed to. And I think we need to have a conversation, a discussion about this, because it's and what I get most frustrated about, I know some things have been in the swales for many years, and that's a different problem. But I see, all of a sudden, I see new things go on the swales, and especially these things with a rope in the middle, and they just proliferate. And people ask me and said, well, why doesn't code enforcement take care of these things? So I wanted to put that discussion before you. I see the director is up here. And by the way, I think I've asked code enforcement on several occasions, and I'm not sure I get a great response to that answer. Mr. Director?
Sure. So there has been some mixed signals in the past regarding what are really, the focus is really about parking and preventing parking and using devices to prevent parking. And anytime there's been anything hazardous, we've definitely acted on it because people have done everything from rebar to things that are tripping hazards. So we've always asked those things be removed. There is definitely a large amount of tension between areas where there's a lot of parking frequently, and sometimes those are temporary for construction, for instance. That's where we've tended to see these things pop up. Mm-hmm. And I am, sympathetic with people not wanting their front yards to become the parking lots for construction sites. But there's also, I think people would be surprised by how much code is allowed. Like, you're actually allowed to plant in the swales, and there's a fair bit of leeway as to what you can do. But the parking barriers, whether they're stones or things with the ropes, really shouldn't be there. I think
and that's the question that we need to ask ourselves: is it are we okay with people parking on the street versus parking in these swales? And yes, I understand, I understand the frustration of a homeowner that would have work crews parking in front of his house or her house in the swales. But we need to make that determination. Is it are we okay with people being in the street and perhaps impacting our fire rescue and impacting our police? Even though, yes, it's painful that your grass gets eaten up by the construction workers. But what's worse? I don't know that I have the answer, but we need to talk about this.
I think we already have something that prohibits people from parking in the street.
Yeah.
Didn't we pass that when we first?
I think it was already a rule before we got on council. I'm pretty sure. I thought.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. In some cases, our streets it's 20 feet of asphalt.
Yeah.
So really, anything that's intruding is starting to cut down on the travel lanes.
Well, the other day by my house, they had a party. There was somebody on the street on this side. On this side, I mean, everybody's like going like this, trying to get through. I mean, it's not a good situation when people start parking on the streets. I can give you my what I've had to deal with. So, one, construction, right? I don't know if in our code, but we have to require that these contractors replace those swales with grass after they're done.
Yes,
because I had to do it when I did our houses. We we did not just in front of the one that we worked on, we did across the street, and we did all the way down our neighbors. Even the neighbor came out and goes, "I can't believe you did all of that." I was like, "We had to. My construction workers did that." So, and he was like, "Yeah, but I've never seen anybody come and do all of it." And I was like, "We had to." So we need to make sure that all the contractors are aware that at the end they have to put sod back on there. Second, in my house, my landscaper actually had to pound one of these 4x4 posts in front of my mailbox because the mailman or woman would drive in at a nice speed and get into my grass and slam on the brakes and just, and I had all my sod sitting in my driveway. Every single time it was just mud and a hole there. And we also have a irrigation sprinkler that kept getting broken off and water going everywhere. So we had to actually put a little post there so that when they hit it, they would bump. So then now she actually has to stay out on the street a little bit and lean over and not come in real fast like that. So there are definitely reasons why some of these things need to be in place, because it's just like, it's just no way sometimes around it. One of the other worst things that happens is heavy rain. Then they park on the swale and you sink, and then you leave and it's just a big hole there, right? And it damages it really, really poorly. So I think those, I don't know what the answer is. One of them would be, we talked about curbs when we had this whole curb issue, and we may want to look at in the future bringing curbs to Key Biscayne, but in a way that they're called like reverse gutter curbs, that you can still drive over them and park, but at least it's a barrier between the grass. The pavement is a little bit stronger. Your wheels can two of the wheels can stay on concrete, so that's a possibility. There's also products out there like I forget what it's called, a GeoGrid or something like that.
Yeah, there's grass paved, there's GeoGrid.
Yeah, so those you don't even see, right? You put them in the dirt, and then you just put the sod on top, and you can drive the fire truck over them on a wet day, and it's not going to make a damage in it. So we could also require new construction to maybe have that in there. I don't know.
So, yeah, look, I think the way the code is written now too, you're fairly limited on the types of materials you're able to put in the swale where it's immediately adjacent to the asphalt, to the detriment, right? So it really calls for turf, and if you're in an area where it's wet regularly, which we have plenty of zones where that's the case, the second one person drives on it once, it's sort of doomed forever, because it can never recover from that because of how saturated it is. So we might need to expand the list of materials that we allow, which there's pros and cons to all these in terms of, gravel can erode asphalt and become a maintenance nightmare and create additional issues. So it needs to be considered. I think it's probably best to come back with some proposals, maybe, and anything from, we even considered like, maybe people are allowed to put some parking restrictive elements if they're adjacent to a construction site. That's a possibility where you can address some of the concerns. But make it very restricted and limited to the duration of the construction, which of course we monitor. It is the case that people are responsible for restoring the swales in the area of the construction, not just immediately adjacent. So that's actually in the code already. So yeah, look, it's not straightforward or as simple as it seems to be.
Well, I think one of the worst ones are these like 6-foot reflectors. There's little cheap ones sticking out, and they're leaning in the street. I'm teaching my daughter how to drive. She's driving, and she's a little close to the edge, and there they are hitting my car. And I'm like, but I'm sitting there thinking, why are these hanging in the street? They have to be back by a certain amount of feet. So there's certain also things like you said. Some things may not be allowed. Some things may be restricted to be so many feet away that can still protect, but not be a nuisance to people driving too. I think that's a good idea. Maybe come back with
I think so too, because you even see instances where people make sure no one parks in their swale, and then they have people come visit and they park in the swale up and down the street, tearing that up. So let's see what you can do with it, Jeremy.
Yeah,
tragedy of the commons.
Okay.
Good. The next issue that I also put on here, it seems to me, and we have scheduled something in October, but I think just put it out there to you is we're going to have to meet more often on stormwater if we're going to push this thing forward. And you know, nobody wants more meetings necessarily, but we need to be able to schedule more stormwater meetings and just deal with that and get responses from staff, because otherwise I fear if it goes too long between one meeting and the other one, you know, a lot of this information gets lost, a lot of it, you know, changes sometimes. So since we already have one scheduled in October, Mr. Manager, when was that? October 27, is it?
October 26th.
October 26th. Okay, so hopefully everybody's got that on their calendar. And that's a workshop, and that's an opportunity for all of us to come with all the questions that we have, put those questions, and let's not have, you know, too many presentations. Let's just be able to have that conversation and discussion as to where we are in this process. But going after that, think about November, December, January, and on as to, you know, maybe we need to have a, you know, maybe it's an hour meeting or something that we then schedule, like, you know, 2 weeks apart from a regular council meeting or something like that. I'm open to suggestions, but I don't see us pushing the envelope further on this stormwater thing if we're not, you know, talking about it more often.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll work with the manager and the clerk and see when, you know, we can do that, and we'll obviously discuss it with you. Okay, Mr. Manager, you have some must-do items that you want to get to?
Let me take a look what we have here. I think there's some important things that you can read. I don't think there's anything I'm looking at right now that needs to be presented.
Okay.
Again, and, you know, just make sure it's clear that the capital improvement program update is in there. And then I'm looking at your item. We just kind of talked about the re-ups meeting schedule, so I think we covered that. I do want to go over, there are a number of community meetings coming up over the next month, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of it. We're going to do another Scoot Safe meeting tomorrow night. Chief, we're going to do that over in the community center. On October 12th, we're going to do a kind of an orientation and a welcome.
What did you say?
Scoot Safe. Our scooters and
the next date.
That is October 11th. That's tomorrow night.
Oh, okay.
So it's classes for kids and adults. You're welcome to come. Chief and I will be there. But yeah, what do you got, Chief? The community room, not the community center. Community room. I'm sorry, downstairs of the village hall. The following night, on October 12th, we'll have a reception for the community groups and the community events. It's an opportunity to really bring them together, kind of celebrate what they're going to provide to the village, and better than that is just to have them begin to cross-pollinate. Because we found when we had a discussion with each one of them that they're looking for someone to do a beach cleanup. Well, we have a beach cleanup, folks. We were looking for someone to provide special needs. We have those. So we want an opportunity for them to all come together. And so maybe not only do we have a community group doing their thing, now they can start working with others. So that's going to be Thursday night. And if you haven't received an invitation, I'll make sure I send that out to you. October 29th, we have a Crandon Boulevard safety meeting. It's a requirement by the FDOT loan. So we'll be doing that with the community, talk through some of the assessments that we've done on the crosswalks, the signaling, and also the pedestrian signals as well. October 26th, we've mentioned it, work order number 3, update with the new modeling. We will follow that on November 1st with the building safety meeting. That's where we're going to have Representative Lopez and Commissioner Regalado. And then lastly, we're looking at November 7th, that after we hold the council meeting on the 26th, we'll then take the information that we took out of that and present to the community. So that's what's coming up between now and November 14th council meeting. So we're going to be busy.
And one, just remembering Melissa's presentation, can any of us, I'll be out of town. Can
That's right,
anybody
yes,
make it
so-
on Friday?
No, I'll be out of town too.
October.
I can.
You can?
On the 13th, my daughter has a
13th,
a thing on
5:30.
that night, which I would like to be there, but
If Allison can be
Oscar?
there, we'll have representation.
I think I should be there, yes.
Okay, good.
13th, yes, Friday. What was the time again?
5:30.
5:30, yeah.
you know, I just want to, before we continue to scoot safe stuff, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm still seeing out of control electric bikes in front of my house. I watch it happen, you know, last week. I had 3 of them behind a car. They were between me and a car. One of them decides to pass the car while the car is moving on the left-hand side to cut across and make a right-hand turn across the right in front of the car. I'm like, why? Why would you do this? Like, it's so dangerous. Most of them who wear helmets are not buckled helmets if they're wearing them, and even more of them that I see are having the helmets hanging on the handlebar. We need to do more enforcement, and it cannot just be at the Village Green, because yes, the Village Green, everything looks good because they all got busted there and they're all wearing their helmet, and that's why they keep it on their shoulder, on their handlebars. But as soon as they're back on the streets, it's crazy. And I think that, and I know you guys, police, it's a hard position to be in. Nobody likes pulling these guys over. They're kids. But you can also tell that a lot of the kids who have already been educated in this are off to driving now, and many new kids are coming in that have not been educated in it. And this is a very fast cycle that we're going to get, because you're hitting like a 4-year window that's constantly turning over. But I'm telling you, they don't care anymore. It looks like the parents don't care if they're wearing the helmets or not. The kids are not following the rules. They're obviously showing that, you know, and I'm not every single kid. There are some kids that do follow, and I do see them wearing the helmets, but I can tell you the majority that I see are not. And like I said before, you guys do you think that this is do whatever you want and nobody cares? It's going to ruin it for everybody. You know where I stand on it, but I'm still extremely worried that someone's going to get badly hurt, and our police need to be on top of these guys in other areas too, other than just the Village Green. So I know you guys probably are, but more.
If I could just address that
Possible.
quickly, after we had that series of accidents, we did step up enforcement for a period. I'd say the last 2 weeks we've done it. We've contacted over 60 parents in that time frame. I don't disagree with you that it's an issue. We are extremely limited on our enforcement capability on Crandon, as you're aware. We're not just enforcing at Village Green. We've done it at the schools. We've done it inside of the residential area. Village Green is just the most visible aspect of what we see. Again, you know, this is something that's a priority. It's remained a priority. I'm curious to see how many parents are going to show up tomorrow night. I can tell you, as you all are aware, we haven't had good participation. I can tell you, I feel very comfortable that this department has done everything that we can within our power. But as you just stated, council member, we can't be out there 24 hours a day chasing down e-bikes and scooters.
And that's one of my worries.
Especially with the issues that we've dealt with the last few weeks. You know, our detectives made arrests last Friday that cleared 8 cases, and they're working another, like, very thin. And I understand when we talk about personnel that there's a concern on that, and I understand that there's money involved, but this is something that everybody in this village has to be a part of. And I know you guys have, and ladies have supported us on this council in doing what we have to do. I don't know what else to say to the parents. I've gone to the Islander News, I've gone to KB Independent, we've done 7 classes, we preach it at the schools, we do it at community events. I just don't know what else we could do. And I don't disagree with you. We've been very, very lucky. But the fact is, the majority of the accidents that happen here are the operators of these devices' fault. The one where the kid got seriously hurt last week is one of the rare occasions it's been a vehicle.
Yeah. And that's one of my big worries, is that we don't have the resources to police this. And if the parents aren't being part of this and the kids are not taking that responsibility, there is still the possibility that we spoke about before of having to ban these if they're not going to continue to follow what they need to follow. And it seems like that's been forgotten again, and they're just running whatever they want to do. So I don't know what else to do, but we have to get that message out there. But if it continues, I mean, we're going to have to take another step. And I don't think anybody wants to, but...
Could I ask what kind of response you get when you speak to those 60 parents?
We agree with you. But what's the ramification? We can write tickets. It's a $75 fine. We can write the fine. They're going to pay the fine, and the kid's going to go out and do it again. That's all I hear is we agree with you. We tell them all the time. I know
Just
that there's
throwing up their hands, sort of.
I don't want to say throwing up their hands because there are some that take it serious. There's some that respond, but the majority are just like, okay, thank you for letting me know, and we'll make sure. The kids have helmets. I don't, yes, I do see them with the unbuckled, but I do see, at least me, when I go out, I see a lot more compliance in that aspect. I think the e-bikes are ridden a lot more egregiously than the motorized scooters, without a doubt. All you have to do is stand here in the afternoon and you'll see it. I mean, we've seen it at the end of council meetings. I think you've all seen me stop kids on the way out of a council meeting. I don't have a solution that I think is viable. Unfortunately, the one aspect that Councilmember Moss is right on is if we mention the word ban, the whole world is going to show up. The whole world shouldn't show up just when the word ban happens or when an accident happens. If we all work on this together, I really believe we can ride responsibly together. And, I know there's going to be transitional phases of ages and driving and getting devices, but, these devices are everywhere here, So everyone has to do their part. And I know it's a convenience factor for some parents. I know it's a fun factor for some of our kids, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's being done correctly. And it's not fair to signal out every child because there are a lot of children that do ride responsibly. But we are giving a vehicle to a child that goes fast. And we don't think what that vehicle can do when it strikes something. And these e-bikes are ridden fast.
And they're heavy.
Well, and the part that really scares me is the fact that there's no training at all. And they are driving them like motorcycles, like cars. They're not what I see people not stopping at stop signs, not knowing how you pass a car or don't pass a car. There's no way they know how to hand signal to turn. And I remember in second grade, we went to Safety Town. You had to learn it. John's got it. But this is the stuff that if it's not being taught in second grade like it was when I went to school a million years ago, then that we have to find a way to get this education out there, or someone is going to get really hurt, or we're going to have to ban them. And I don't know, do you do the talks at MAST also, or just?
So we reached out to Mass Academy last week. We have been unsuccessful in getting in there. Our VROs went over there and made progress. We don't have a definitive date as to when we're going to be able to have those talks, but it wasn't a hard no as it has been in the past.
Because there's easy 45, 50 bikes.
More.
I count them when they come and when they go.
What's our policy on that? Are we don't want to encourage it, or we are okay with it, or do we?
I enforce the law. The policy comes from the council.
No. What is our present policy on that?
Right now that they're allowed to operate them as long as they're following all the laws. Yeah. The one thing we were restrictive through the council on is within village parks on where they can ride the motorized scooter or electric bike.
I'm talking about going back and forth to MAST.
Yeah, that hasn't been addressed. Okay. They're treated like a bicycle.
And I'll say, observing them almost daily each way, because we're not great about the bus, that they're good and they're really effective. Where it gets dangerous, and I imagine their parents don't know, is that especially coming home from school, there is never just one kid on a bike. There's two or there's three. Yeah. And I'm not sure that the parent of that passenger knows how that kid's getting home, or that looks a little dicey, but they stay totally protected on a path. And I think it has definitely positively impacted traffic. We have, I mean, the equivalent of one school bus of kids on those things.
Okay.
Or that many parents' cars not on the road.
That one makes sense.
It does make sense. So it becomes extra complicated when you're trying to solve for the problem of the behavior within the village.
So we can get the liaison to work on that issue.
Yeah, I think, look, it takes a village, like you said. This is education, this is communication, this is us getting out there. I know the manager had an engagement with the communications expert. Maybe this is something that we kind of beef up there as well. So I originally was somebody that was completely against banning. And so if the word banning is going to work, then to your point, this is going to become something that a few are going to ruin it for the rest of us. And so we should say here on Dais, we are all leaning towards something a little bit more extreme, and the other option being somebody getting really hurt. So I'd like to see what does the communication look like? How can we beef that up? How does the education look like? I know you're doing a great job. I don't, but I think there's also a good point in that there's a whole new slew of kids that are, holiday season's coming. They're not going to, it's not like parents are going to stop buying these vehicles. And then the unintended consequences of keeping people off these bikes. Do we want all those kids in cars and buses going to Mast?
Yep.
I don't see a solution, but I will say I am leaning towards now that word, that awful word that I sat up here on Dais and said, I will not take that kind of right away from our residents. But unless we don't all get together and we turn this into a village-wide, everybody, all hands on deck, it is not going to get any better. And I see them getting better in some cases, but I see a lot of kids not just unstrapped helmets. They're hanging on they literally have the helmet and it's hanging on their handlebar as they're speeding across. Why? Because they're not on a main street. And lights, they're like non-existent.
Lights
there are
still
no
a
lights.
big
They're
issue.
stealth. They're quiet. And you don't see them coming. So when I say it takes a village, and I'm not suggesting everybody pull over a kid, but I have pulled over kids. I will grab them and tell them, hey, listen, you're going to get a ticket. And worse off, we're going to take that away from you. So and they look at me with a little bit of fear and trepidation. They put on their helmet and they go away. Now, do they continue to do that 4 blocks down the road? I'm not sure. But this is going to take a village. And unfortunately, this is a problem of our success of being such a safe community as well.
Yep.
And I certainly don't want to give that up. So what can we do?
I got a solution. We should have a banning meter, right? So as
There you go.
things are not going well,
Maybe.
we've raised that up and
On the
maybe up to
entry-
level
on the new entry
90,
blocks.
Maybe.
95, and they're like, oh,
Like we get
gotta
to a
hurry
certain
up,
number of
get back
citations,
down.
it goes up.
Yeah.
The citations go up, that goes up, and that meter hits 100, man, we're banning them. And that's it. And we're going door to door. We're communicating door to door to every person saying you can no longer have electric bikes on this island.
I have a simple solution.
Okay.
Banning meter?
Oh.
There's a
Simple
word
solution
worse
is
than
that
ban. It's
in lobbying this session, basically, one of the reasons parents aren't concerned, even though the kids might get killed or anything else, because they have insurance against liability, against what the kid might do or what might happen to other people.
Sure.
But if in fact we were able to get the Department of Insurance change the standard HO3 or whatever policy they have to say that, you know what, liability is not covered for kids riding motorized vehicles, electric or otherwise. And all of a sudden, those same parents would have to say, if something happens, I'm not covered. And all of a sudden, that might make a big difference to people, even though $75 fine might not. But somebody having an accident, hurting somebody else, and not having insurance might make a real big difference.
So add that too, right? It's several layers.
So we've gone the lobbyist route. We can revisit it. We've
That's
tried
lobbying.
it both years I've been here.
Yeah.
We've tried to petition Tallahassee. I can tell you our representative Vicky Lopez is passionate about this. She is definitely a champion on our side for this issue. It's just because these are treated as bicycles, the bicycles, it's a powerful group to go against to change laws.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is we should maybe remind, our representatives that story that she told here, which was one of her colleagues up in the northern part of the state got hurt and was willing to support our efforts now going forward. So maybe we can get some support.
Let's bring that.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.